Let your eyes fall closed as the sky thins to pale honey. Before you lies a gravel bar, warmed after the noon sun, quartzite striations glinting like ancient fingerprints. Farther out, the grassland shivers, and a ribbon of shallow water mirrors a flock wheeling overhead. This is not a capital or a temple. It is 1,000,000 years ago, a place where humans stand upright, take long steps, and learn to remain together around the light. In your hands is a bifacial hand axe, a stone body pre-shaped. Then the face is flipped and tuned until the cutting edge runs the length of your hand, along the long axis of your palm. It slices meat, splits tubers, breaks bone to take marrow, digs the dry soil to find roots. Nearby, semi-finished cores rest and wait, like seeds of edges yet to come. Closer still is a fine ash smear, the sign of a hearth kept through many nights. Fire carries warmth, pushes back the night beasts, draws the band together, and turns tough food into a sweet, rich supper. You do not need to hurry at all. The long day opens by small, sure motions, step by step. Choose stone by eye, by hand, by sound. Read the sign of birds to find meat left after predators. Cross still water, lift your tool clear of the surface. Raise a thin windbreak with dry branches and stone set as props. Then night comes, and the band closes around the orange glow, where the memory of stone is passed in hand rhythms. No words required. If you close your eyes now, you hear the resonance of stone on stone, crisp and dry, as if counting time for the earth. The night wind has thinned. On the dark ground lies a ring of grey ash, a few grains of charcoal still holding tiny red points like insect eyes. The smell of old smoke blends with damp earth after dew, drifting lightly up the back of your nose. Along the hearth's rim, fine silica sparkles because many nights of flame have licked there, leaving a halo of changed soil. Right at the edge, an Aculean hand axe rests. 2 faces in symmetry, or a full round belly, a tapering nose. The edge is smooth, flat, thin like a dry leaf pinched with care. Your body uncoils from the night's curled posture. Shoulders open, knees look for a brace, soles find the cool ground. The space around the shelter is just wide enough for wind to pass, tight enough to keep warmth so a live ember survives the night. Dawnbirds pull a thin strand of calls that blends with grass leaves rubbing. Farther off, a shallow sheet of water reflects a pale band of sky. Faint tracks of last night's hyenas have tightened, lying still like faded writing on the earth. The first task always starts with breath. The in-breath lengthens a little. The out-breath slows. Your body rises by a chain of familiar motions, all spare and efficient. The hearth wakes with a bundle of dry grass warmed near the embers, plus a few scraps of wood. Pale blue smoke curls upward. The fire begins to crackle, not loud, just steady. Weak orange slants across the flakes scattered around the small workshop floor, each shard a memory of yesterday's strikes. The toolkit sits within reach a core of fine quartzite, a heavier hammer stone, a flat stone playing the anvil. You turn the core in firelight. Your eyes search for planes that can take a fracture. Your fingers follow a thin lip where force should go. Left hand holds, right hand lifts the hammer stone. Your arm drops on its known diagonal, a dry, clear note. A flake jumps free. A new edge shows, reflecting the fire like a narrow tongue of light. Your blows follow your breath, neither fast nor slow. A flake too thick will spoil symmetry. A flake too thin will be weak and chip. Each removal is a decision about the shape ahead. The hand axe does not arrive at once. It comes after dozens of trial, after both faces are cleared of bumps, after the nose edge narrows to favour cutting and splitting, digging. When the 2 faces flow together into a willing central ridge, the tool carries the idea of the work to come. The fire grows warm. Another handful of cores is set close to the ring of earth fired many times. The rim is not as fierce as the hearth's centre, warm enough to make stone more docile under the hammer without random breaks. Fineness comes from feeling with your hands, with scent and with sound. Stones are warmed just enough to shift colour very slightly, enough that the next blow yields a thin, smooth flake. On the ground, the fresh pieces fall into a casual fan, revealing a silent logic of your 2 hands. A big long bone waits near the fire, not to roast now, only to warm. The imagined fat is reward for noon or afternoon. Breakfast asks for little. A few dry roots from yesterday's pouch, a pinch of hard seeds cracked by a sharp flake, a few green wild fruits. Your mouth chews calmly. Your eyes still watch the sky's widening ring. Every movement stays small, careful not to wake the grass. The band's rhythm rises. The woodkeeper checks the dryness of the bundle gathered while the grassland still had dew. The water-bearer checks the skin bag tucked behind the windbreak stone. A hand-length log is pulled near the fire to warm, ready to serve as a temporary haft for a new stone blade. No calls, no commands. Each person knows their place and task. Like flakes that lie where they should on an open-air floor, the ground around the hearth tells the story better than any words. Charcoal dust caught in the sediment says the fire has burned here many nights. Flakes clustered in bands point to favoured seats, likely set to the wind so the smoke drift away. A soft slump in the floor from many footfalls makes a faint crescent. Seen from above, the whole picture opens like a stone flower fire at the centre, petals of flake bands spreading, a stem of path leading down to the water's edge. A long slender stick stands to read the wind. Today the wind shifts only a little. The sky looks clearer than usual, a sign of a dry morning. This decides where to sit and strike, where to hang skins, which way to move when the sun climbs. The fire is the coordinator. Its light is not only for warmth and safety, it teaches how to count beats, how to mark spacing, a common measure by which the band adjusts itself. Your body is warm enough now that motions run smooth. A second core rises. A new margin is shaped. 2, 3 careful strikes, then a pause to study the ridge. Your palm strokes to test the small rises. One blow trues the edge. One more joins 2 planes. When the outline holds firm, the hand axe moves to a light grinding with a fine stone, not for shine, only to remove needless saw teeth that would make the edge chip. Nearby, a small gravel bar lies exposed where old rain washed the dirt away. Each pebble is a candidate for a role in the chain of work. Some serve as hammerstones for weight and hardness, some as anvils for their flat faces, some for grinding because of fine grit. Your eye learns quickly to sort by colour, by quiet sheen, by the feel of weight in the hand. These standards go unnamed, yet they repeat by setting each type in its own small corner around the fire. When the fire settles, the circle of people draws closer. The eldest checks an old hand axe with a missing corner, chooses to shorten it and restore the margin, turning it into a tool for cutting and slicing. Reuse is more than saving. It lays another layer of memory on the stone-old chips become new curves. Surfaces once the back become the belly. The tool lives a long life, each life a function. Breakfast ends with a few swallows of water, a quick rinse of the hands in the wind to dry. Your skin carries a fine dust of stone and the smell of smoke. Dawnlight goes to pale gold. The early birds shift. The open air grows still. On the ground, last night's signs remain, no longer a large worry. Night hunters have pulled back into the brush, leaving the ground to human steps. The last preparation for a good morning is to check the carry bag. Inside lies a freshly ground hand axe, a few thin, sharp flakes for knives, a hand-size hammerstone, a strip of dry sinew for quick ties, a few twisted bark cords, a light skin bag of water. On your shoulder ride a probing staff and a bundle of dry twigs to feed the fire if needed. Each object has its place, so when your hand reaches in, it meets the right thing without delay. Before you leave the hearth, the coal surface is drawn smooth with a branch so the fire will burn slow and keep seeds of heat in the ash. A small ring of stones is added on the windward side so the pull does not run too strong. The hearth is never left to itself. It is the heart of the shelter, the rendezvous for every go and return. Keeping fire alive is like keeping a warm artery, a shared promise that there will be a place to come back to. Warmth and light when the sun is gone. Dawn has turned to morning. The ground holds more heat, the air less damp. The hearth's rim throws a soft gold along the hand axe's edge. That first step out of the ash ring is firm and quiet. Behind you, the hearth breathes a gentle smoke. Ahead lie gravel, grassland, water, and the opening of paths. The new edge brightens in your hand like a small promise. Your breathing balances. The workday of the Homo Erectus begins from such calm repeats, and from those repeats slow, sure change gathers over time. At a distance, the naked rim of the gravel bar calls up the next task. Knocks will rise again in even measure, flakes will spread like petals. Now everything stands ready. Fire steady, tools sharp, body warm, path open. You set out, carrying part of the hearth in the warmth on your skin, in the ash that clings to your hair, in the thin light that lies on the freshly ground edge. The walk toward the stone bar is the first beat of a song that will run all day. The trail to the gravel bar shows itself under low grass. The ground holds last night's scavenger prints, running side by side, then veering into the scrub. Air by the water is cooler. The smell of fresh mud mixes with wet stone. The river surface lies quiet, reflecting a flock that wheels in rings. Each time the wind moves, a streak of light draws across the water like a needle stitching a thin seam. The riverbank is a store of raw material that opens each morning. Cobbles rolled by many floods have rounded, their skins a soft gloss. Your hand turns each stone, reading grain through skin fine quartzite, dense basalt, brittle quartz. Your forefinger taps to hear resonance. The dry thud of basalt differs from quartz's fine glassy ping. The weight in your palm sorts them into familiar roles: hammerstone, anvil, core, grinding stone. You lift a quartzite core where two flat faces meet. The place for the platform is set by eye and by the memory in your hand. The hammerstone rises on a diagonal from your shoulder. The first blow falls with controlled speed. A flake springs free, leaving a shell-shaped scar. The fresh edge is sharp and throws a dull silver glint. After that the rhythm steadies on blow after blow, laying a fan of flakes around where you sit. Not only your hands work, your eyes sweep both banks. Your ears sift the water's talk and the insect burr, the sound of dry leaves pressed under weight. Someone else stands higher, staff in hand, watching the thicket's rim. The band's rhythm works like this: one or two people nap. One keeps watch. One follows the water's edge for roots, river snails, shells. The sharing of work goes unnamed. It flows in a steady meter set by the morning fire. The first flakes are stacked in two small piles. One holds thin, blade-like pieces, good for soft meat, shaving bark, parting sinew. The other holds thicker pieces for wedges, prying, or scraping bone. The core turns, flips, seeks the next plane. When the mass nears symmetry, the core becomes a hand-axe preform. The blows then go shallow and broad to open the face, then move toward the margin to taper the tip. The two faces must speak across the central ridge, not leaning too far to either side. Each time you pause, the fingertips run the edge to feel the tiny uneven saw teeth. Then a fine-grained stone rubs them down. No shine is needed, only enough smoothness so the margin will not chip when it bites into a long bone or a hard root. River water flicked across the surface shows veins and hairline fractures. An old crack reminds you not to choose that point as a platform. Between two runs of blows, your breath returns as it did by the hearth. In through the nose, out through the mouth, even and deep. The stone's weight gathers your mind to a narrow point where the shape is about to arrive. In the young sun, the preform takes its look: a full belly, a slim back, a fine nose. When you turn it in the air, a line of light runs along the edge like a bright thread. A sharp flake is chosen as a test blade. You pare a dry twig packed with sand to see if the edge bites the grain as you intend. Fibres lift thin, resin spills a light sweetness. A strip of dry hide is cut lengthwise. Its threads show even, these are quiet checks, not a show. Tools are proved by small tasks to ready them for larger ones. At the water's edge, the snail hunter slides a thin flake under the mud. A rough shell of nacre appears, its inner face a pale green gloss. It is not for adornment. It may hold a sip of water or a spoon of marrow fat in a quick meal. A little farther on, a water-soaked root is pulled up, clay clinging, the rhizome brittle. Some will be dried near the hearth so they soften for chewing. Clean mud coats your hands, yet the marrow you picture feels close ahead. By mid-morning the sun is high enough that your shadow tightens. The wind swings and pulls the smell of hot grass off the plain. Your hands are warm. Your shoulders fall back into the working rhythm. A basalt core is tried. The first blow sheds a thick piece. Basalt is heavy and tough, good for hammer stones, though to thin it for a hand axe takes a very steady hand. You drop the hand axe plan, keep the piece for hammering. Such give keeps the chain of work from stalling. A nearly finished preform is set on the rim where slanting sun warms it. The stone shifts colour slightly as it heats, not to charcoal's red glow, only enough to make the stone a little more compliant. The lesson comes from many mornings when flakes were too brittle in the cold and snapped wrong. Back at the hearth, the fire will take this role again. Here, the sun does its part. The vultures above are an old signal. They wheel without calls, riding warm currents. Now and then one drops far off, then rises again. You do not put down the tool and run. The grassland teaches that big meat rarely belongs to the first to arrive empty-handed. The right time comes when the beasts have lost interest, when the sun has whipped their backs too hot, when the softest parts loosen under the hide, then thin edges earn their keep. Now, you keep striking. A short rest comes under a low tree. Water from the skin goes in 3 swallows. Fresh dug roots are rinsed and snapped crisp. Your jaw chews slow, your tongue sets the beat. In your head, the morning list is checked to finish at least 2 standard hand axes, 1 thin blade for the sinew cutter, 1 thicker piece for a wedge, lash a temporary half to an old hand axe just repaired. Each aim is not for tally. It equips the band for the hours ahead. Back on the gravel bar, a small workshop has taken shape. Flakes fall in a narrow band to one side, kept away from the water so they will not drift off. The hammerstone rests to your right, the anvil fixed with 3 broad cobbles. The preform lies near your thigh. Thin flakes are stacked in a bark pouch. The ground begins to hold the signs of work, a dusting of pale grey that glints like chalk. Faint slide marks where pieces have scraped. A younger person is brought close to see the distance between the chosen platform and the planned edge. There are no words. A larger hand rests over a smaller hand, guides the arc, halts at the stop. The first test blow goes astray. The flake shears wrong, the margin chips. No matter. The core turns to another face. The lesson continues. Stone teaches patience with its scars, and those scars can be turned into a clean curve if you know how to look. When the preform meets the mark, the temporary haft is made. A stick warmed at the fire for less spring is split into thin fibres at one end. The axe blade nests in the groove, sinew strips bind tight, bark cord twists on. Each wrap is cinched with even pull so the blade will not twist when it bites into bone or a root. The haft is tested with a few chops into dry wood. The sound is firm. The feedback up your arm does not sting. The result is good. Noon is near. The light turns glaring. The water flashes hard. The mud scent fades. Hot grass takes its place. More vultures gather overhead. At the plain's edge, a few dark points move slowly, likely jackals feeling their way. The skin bags are checked again. Flakes are enough for many uses. The new hand axes are ready. A long bone picked up earlier rides hidden in a pouch, waiting to be set near the fire and warmed before it is split. The marrow inside is a high-energy reward for the afternoon. On the way back, you look over the gravel bar as if at a page still open. Fan-shaped scatters recall the order of actions, the seat, the wind. After the next rain, some will wash off, some will sink under a thin layer of soil. For today they are clear enough to mirror your 2 hands. If someone passes this bank after hundreds of dry seasons, they will be able to read this morning in the small pieces left here. Shade under the thicket receives your steps like a gate. The hearth lies close now, near enough that the familiar smoke already arrives. Your belly reminds you. One more task before eating tend the fire. It was shielded well at dawn, so now it needs only a few dry twigs and a thicker stick to hold steady. The band gathers around the coal ring. Each person sets down what they are bringing in the right place new stone. Roots, river snails, a bundle of dry grass for the afternoon's work. When the flame lifts a little, its light sweeps the edge of the hand axe just finished. A bright line runs along the thin margin like a small fish sliding by. The sense of connection comes not from praise. It comes from a coherent chain of motions that held together from dawn to noon. Your body lowers. Your shoulders drop. Your breath returns to the long measure. The hearth is the centre again, and the morning at the gravel bar slips behind like a piece of music played in tune. Lunch begins by setting the long bone near the fire. Heat softens the fat inside. A rich scent rises. A thick flake serves as wedge and as hammer. The first blow opens the bone. The boar shows a pale cream. A slim stick whittled earlier dips and stirs, and small sips are passed along. Energy moves quickly into bodies. At the same time, roots sit on hot stones to soften, skins char a little, the flesh turns mealy. River snails rest in rough nacre shells, near the embers to cook slowly. The sounds now are fat's faint fizz, wind through branches, even breathing. Before the sun leans toward afternoon, a few intact cores are set by the hearth to take a mild heat. Not a red glow, only a drying that makes them less brittle. In the evening, when hands return to stone, the blows will behave. Fire teaches preparation, as it did in the morning. Everything turns around it, not like a god, but like a shared breath. Stone dust lies thin on your skin. Smoke lingers in your hair. In your pouch, a new hand axe weighs just right. In your eyes, the sky starts to harden into sharper light. Half a day has moved by in a familiar beat. That beat links person to person, morning to afternoon, riverbank to hearth, hunger to marrow, the knocks to the light sliding along the edge. Afternoon will have its work. For now, midday is a pause where hands rest on knees, where the fire holds enough warmth, where new edges gleam and wait their turn. Sunlight tilts across the low crowns of trees and runs bright patches over the grass. The air is less cold. The smell of earth warms plainly. Above, the ring of vultures thickens, spiralling on hot currents like a giant shell. From the edge of the scrub, the ground shows pale drag marks running in one direction. The splayed toes of hyenas mix with jackal claw prints, dark in places, faint in others. The line of tracks writes into the grass like a story mid-sentence. You stop for one beat and listen. The wind carries a light metal tang and the rank of animal hair. The scent of blood set and hide slightly dried. It says the night hunter's feast is nearly over. You lift the dry staff and mark distance on the ground with your other hand. Pick shaded spots to slip into if the pack comes back. Every movement is short and spare, your breath long and soft like when you sat by the fire. When the open ground shows, a gazelle carcass lies on its flank by a strip of sunken soil. The ribs are open, half a hindquarter is gone, the belly is empty, the ribcage shines like silver keys. The bone edges show jagged tooth scores, the cut margins dulled by tongue and spit. Hyena prints are still fresh, the mud not yet set. The pack has withdrawn, only 2 jackals stand off, heads tilted, eyes black as pebbles. The sky lies bare of roars. Only insects coil in the heat. 3 people spread in a shallow arc, one higher to watch, one with a hand axe stepping slow, one at the rim ready to throw a stone into the grass if any shape moves. No calls. A low hand means stop. A turn of the wrist means change course. You circle to the upwind side, lower yourself, set the hand axe to an intact seam of hide. The edge moves slow and even, light strokes under the hair. The hide parts with a dry whisper. A thin sheen of fat takes a waxy shine. Your other hand slips a thin flake between layers to act as a knife. A slightly sticky membrane lifts to the point. The meat beneath shows dark red. Soft flesh near the sternum remains because predators often ignore that less muscular strip. You run the flake right along the bone. The edge makes a small sound like fine glass touching shell. White bone shows, and on it straight. Fine cut marks lie over the ragged gnaw of teeth. The order of things is written while your hand works, the latecomer leaving a script of their own. A thicker flake is set to the knee as a wedge. The hammerstone drops a short, controlled blow. The joint gives with a deep thud. The cartilage lets go. The lower leg comes free. Marrow in the long bone is saved for last, so it slips quickly into a leaf pouch to split later by the fire. Meat is cut into long strips, rolled into bundles, are tied with bark fibre. Not much, but enough to share. At the edge of the patch, someone gathers shed hair into a fist and bags it. Since dry hair takes a spark well when needed, you bend low and gather the small bits that still cling to bone, wasting nothing. Children in the band often watch this a long while, tilting their heads like small vultures, learning how fingers and blade move together. Today a boy stands a few arm spans away, hugging a tree base, eyes fixed on the working edge. You lift the preform, turn it once so sunlight runs the thin margin, as if to say this shape is the key to the meal. When there is enough meat, the band falls back and looks over the open patch for 2 long breaths. No hiding traces, no erasing, only tidying, picking up good chips that fell aside. 2 jackals move in to take the place, low and slow, eyes still cutting across. You turn away, ears still on the drag of bone, the dry music of grass, stone, teeth, and wind. On the way back, the spare trees stand like posts bracing the sunlight, and each pool of shade is an invitation to pause. Your steps stay even, your breath long. The tied meat swings in the pouch like a pendulum, promising an evening meal. The hearth receives the band with the sweet, familiar scent of smoke. Ash-covered coals are pulled apart to show an orange red like the core of a ripe fruit. Dry branches are stacked in a lean roof so the flame climbs without a loud flare. Flat stones along the rim make a temporary shelf. The long bone is set near, not too close, so warmth moves inward slowly. The softest cuts hang on a thick branch, far enough from the ember bed that the surface dries while the inside stays moist. You do not call it cooking. It is simply letting fire help food enter the body more easily. You squat by the flames and warm your hands, feel the heat rise back through wrists, arms, and shoulders. Noon sweat dries. Stone dust becomes a fine chalk on your skin. The scent of warming meat reaches your nose, mixing with root flesh on the heat. A few roots sit right on hot stones. Skins charter black. Insides turn soft and nutty. A few river snails rest in rough nacre shells, small bubbles gathering, whispering softly. The meal is quiet, since bellies and hands do the talking. Now for marrow, the bone's end sits on a stone. A wedge braces. The hammerstone taps short and quick. A crack opens. The bore shows pale yellow, gleaming. A slim stick carved earlier dips in, stirs, then paints a thin coat on warmed meat. The richness runs straight onto your tongue like a small mild flame. You pass the stick, eyes on the next hand so no drop spills. In the hearth's warmth, sharing travels through familiar motions, no voice needed. Before the sky turns violet, the living space is set for night. Logs are pulled close, angled into a loose fence on the open side, not to block wind, rather to draw a visible line around the ring of bodies. The coal bed is split into small parts, some hidden under ash to last long. 2 green logs sit nearby to brace dry sticks that will be fed through the dark. The edge sleeper is the quick-footed, quick-eared one. The centre holds the children and the weak. The place nearest the fire belongs to the person who has finished the first watch. You pick a spot with a low earth lip for your back, where your eyes can keep both the open ground and the flame. The hand axe rests by your hip, edge turned inward, its haft propped on a stone so it will not slip. A thin cutting flake hides in the bark pouch tucked as a pillow. You finish a little water. Your mouth dries to a pleasant salt. Smoke has settled in your hair into the day's own scent. Firelight tightens and loosens your pupils, like the band's slow breath. Night lowers not as one curtain, rather as many thin silks laid one over another. First deep blue, then purple, then a gentle black. Stars rise at the rim of sky beyond the river, a run of grit on black stone. Grass shuffles, insects tremble. The muffled wing beats of night birds touch your ear. Far off, a choked roar lifts and drops, a short reminder that the fire's circle has an edge. Inside that edge, warmth draws the people together. Bodies soften into the shapes they choose. You close your eyes for a moment and let the day's images move across the inner lids. The silver riverbank, your hand reading the stone's grain, basalt's dry knock, fine-cut marks on bone, a run of a sun along the hand axe's edge, warm marrow on your tongue, the light feeling in your chest as the band sits in a ring. All of it stacks like flakes around a workshop floor, a record that can be read if touched. With your breathing, today's hand axe links to yesterday's, then to the day before, and will link onward, a stream of learning without a name. The watch turns, a hand rests lightly on your shoulder. You open your eyes at once as without a start. Your body has been taught 1,000 times by wind, fire, night, and sound. You ease a dry stick into the coal bed, let the flame lift a little, then settle again. Do not let it flare, only keep the embers living. The dim red is enough for your eyes to catch the lines of grass, stones, a hand axe, someone's feet crossed in sleep. Above, the stars have thickened. A pale road runs across the treetops. You listen. Tiny footfalls of a rodent run along the grass verge. A spoon-soft plop as a river snail left in a shell turns. A faint tick where heat opens a fine line inward. From the carcass ground, the jackals lead one another past again, a drift of damp fur and dust in their wake. They do not step across the loose fence. They do not cross the ring of smoke. The fire makes an unseen boundary that every kind reads and respects. With a slower breath, your mind leaves the scene and goes into the deeper part where memories of other hearths warm with the coals. Long rains when the fire died and the band held together in the cold, then coaxed it back with rare dry tinder. Wild dawns when flame was stubborn and people cupped their breath so embers would catch. Far journeys when a live coal rode in dry bark, a small red heart by the ribs. Fire does more than cook. It teaches how to stay near, how to wait, how to share heat, how to remember. You shift. Rest your knee on your arm, your eyes still sweeping the edge of dark. Across the circle, the boy from midday lies curled, holding the bark pouch as if it were a bright stone. His hair holds smoke in little locks. Tomorrow he will sit closer to the gravel. His hand will slip less, and one of his flakes will show a cleaner curve. Knowledge passes through movements, through looks, through the way a stone edge is laid to an animal's hide. No names are needed, only repetition until it settles into bone. Night sets fully when the wind turns. Air cools. The first dew touches your skin like a thin note. You draw your legs toward the fire, set a green log near the coals to keep the air around the hearth from drying too much. Everything lies where it should. The hand axe within reach, thin flakes in the pouch, the staff leaning, the water inside, the next watcher sleeping by your left hand. Even the flame's shadow has its place, climbing rock faces, showing and fading on cue like a gentle creature tamed. When the watch passes to another ass, you touch the hand axe edge once more as if touching a small promise. The stone feels cool, the margin is fine, a narrow spine runs the centre. Morning will need it. The riverbank will need it. The small bellies will need it. You turn so your back takes the warmth, your face takes the cool, your eyes close. Your breathing finds the circle's measure, rising together, falling together, like a drum skin drawn tight and calm. Above, the river of stars moves like slow water. Far at the horizon, a slim dark strip is nibbled by a grass fire. Orange points small as insect eyes. The wind brings another smoke. Not your hearths. The smell of plain burning somewhere. A fire that belongs to no one. You feel the hard line between that fire and this one. Between danger and warmth. The wide and the near. That distinction is the lesson the band has learned all day. Near first light, a bird wakes the leaves with its wings. A thin, clipped call, like a stone blade touching dry bone. The dark pulls back by arm spans, making room for the palest grey. You open your eyes to find the coals sunk deep under ash, only a few tiny reds left, small as fish eyes. Your arm reaches out and stirs lightly, adds a few dry twigs. The fire answers with a soft breath. Bodies shift. The scent of night folds away. The scent of the new day comes, thin smoke mixed with wet grass. You sit up and lay a hand on your face, feel old stone dust and new sweat. In your head the morning list takes shape, like pebbles lining into a run. Riverbank, fresh cores, thin flakes, roots, river snails, watch. Everything goes back to its place, like a ring. The ring of fire grows redder. The ring of people draws a notch closer. The ring of day links to night. The ring of hand meets stone. The bright ring runs along the new edge again, and when the sun lifts over the grass, the edges will shine like blades of light, ready to write the next lines of a story that began at dawn. A tawny gravel bar lies open under the sun. Stone faces are freckled like the hide of an old animal. Banded grain slants across them like ancient fingerprints. Hot air carries a dry peel each time the hammerstone meets the core. Every strike sends a hard, sharp note that runs over the flat noon like a beak tapping a hollow trunk. The quarry sits at the foot of a river terrace left dry in the long seasons. Water has pulled back and left thousands of flat round cobbles, their colours running from pale yellow to grey-brown. Some are milky quartz, lightly rough, cool in the hand. Some are quartzite, fine-grained, with a satin sheen when tilted into the sun. Some are dark basalt, heavy, with a musty damp scent when rubbed on skin. Mixed among them lie a few rare pieces of flint, dull glassy faces with fracture edges bright as shell rims. Riverbank and dry quarry make an ideal place, since water has already sorted the stone, rounded it, and left a density you can trust. If your eyes read the faces, your hands weigh the mass, your ears listen for tone, the material shows the way. You sit a little askew so the sun falls across the stone. Your left hand rolls the cobble in your palm to feel the grain. If the grain is too coarse, the break will be ragged. If it is too fine, the stone may shatter brittle. A fingernail taps the edge, and you listen is the ring clear like a clay bounce or dull like a lump of dry mud. When you need to, You touch the cobble to your lips. The cold of dense stone seeped through thin skin tells you how solid the inside is. A test blow with a hammerstone on a natural plane, and if the bright fracture shows a small bulb of percussion at the root with even ripples running out, the stone has answered. With the core chosen, the work becomes a chain of deliberate motions. A Sulian does not wait on luck. First, you make a clean platform at the core's margin. You shave a shallow flake to open a small plane, just large enough for the hammerstone to meet the exact spot. You turn the core and mark, in your mind, the teardrop you want. No lines are scribed. Your body keeps the proportions. The tip will be slim and strong, the base broad for a sure grip. The edge will run in one continuous curve, unbroken. The first blow is the opening line. The hammerstone falls along a short arc, the strike angle near 1/3 of a circle. A large flake jumps free. The fracture face smooth, ripples spreading like rain rings in a puddle. A fresh surface shows, cooler and brighter than the weathered rind. You turn the core, choose a point, strike again, this time taking a flake from the opposite side. The two faces thin in turn. For every 3 large flakes you send away, the mass steps closer to the shape you set. When a flake will not go the way you intend, you change your wrist angle, change the platform. There is no hurry. Every wasted scar reminds you about angle, about force, about the stone's grain. When the teardrop shows itself, you flip the piece to balance it. The midridge must run from tip to base, set slightly off-centre so the curve stays even. Next comes thinning, lowering any step fractures left behind. The blows grow lighter, more exact. When both faces are in balance, you tune the edge with small strikes so the margin sits near 20 to 30 degrees. The cutting edge the length of your hand will be the place where meat parts from bone, a branch parts from its trunk, bark parts from fibre. At the end, you grind the margin on a flat sandstone slab laid down, drawing the piece evenly so the little teeth fall away and the edge takes a bite as smooth as a fish in water. Not only the core holds value, a large fresh flake, its edge thin as a leaf, is already a perfect cutter. A flake with one sharp corner opens membranes and slips into sinew. A thicker, duller edge becomes a scraper for hide bark. A triangular flake with a strong angle can serve as a wedge. In a Sulian, both core and flake are useful. Each part of a single strike can lead to a task this afternoon, tonight, tomorrow. At the margin of the bar, the traces of a workshop spread like a page on the ground. A sweep of flakes lies in a half-moon where a napper sat facing the sun. In its middle a thinned core rests with the margin still bright. A few arm spans away sits the hammerstone with a battered flat and pale silver scuffs where it met hundreds of faces. The dark sandstone slab shows a soft strip along its edge, the sign of thousands of grinding pulls. If you look closely, you can refit some flakes, piecing the process back together and seeing the chain from round core to teardrop. Anyone coming later can read a day's labour from the ground alone. The order here is loose and firm at once. The experienced person sits where light and wind are kind, back braced to a boulder so force travels steady. Close by, the learner sits within reach, eyes on hands, ears on sound. Shaping a hand axe is learned by eye, by skin, by bone, seldom by words. The elder strikes once, stops, and puts the flake in the novice's hand. The weight of that flake says many things. The elder passes the core so the novice can try to choose a platform. When a blow skews off, there is no scolding, only a turn of the core and one right strike. Silence at the quarry is not empty. It is crowded with unspoken guidance. By mid-morning, shadows have pulled tight at people's feet. Sweat on shoulders dries and rises again. A fine dust, pale grey, works into the grooves of your forefinger. The pads of your palms sting from holding the core hard. On your thigh, the tiny pieces lie like drying fish scales. Your ear keeps listening. Every stone, as every strike, has its own voice. Some ring like a hung bell, some thud like a drum of earth. Your ear learns the difference so your hand will not pay for mistakes. A heavy basalt core feels sure in the hand, yet it is stubborn to thin. Good quartzite yields long edges, yet the rim may chip if the angle is wrong. Flint shows up rarely, yet if you find it, the cut goes sweet as a fresh blade. Experience settles into selection. Your eyes sweep a rough pile and halt where the shape is right. Your hand lifts and knows the centre of mass at once. Your body sets the stance, and your whole frame sends one clean blow. When a flake jumps just as you planned, a small current runs your spine, your body keeps that feeling to find again. Younger people are sent to read the floor. They spread the pickup area, pile the flakes so no one trips, and watch which direction the flakes fall the most. If many bulbed flakes lie to the napper's right, perhaps the hand is right dominant and the removals follow a set chain. These observations go into memory and later are told by the fire with hands and sand. A small child gets a broken hand axe to roll on the dirt, to begin seeing curves by eye and to start measuring with the palm. Sometimes the wind turns and brings a faint thread of smoke from a far noon hearth. That scent says another band is napping too, preparing tools for the afternoon's forage. Each quarry is a centre. Each centre pushes life out around it. Within half a day's walk, new edges will show at the waterline, under a tree's shade, at the holes of burrowing things. At a big log hollowed by lightning, today's craft will enter today's work, not be saved for later. When a hand axe reaches the thinness you want, your palm runs the edge, feeling the ridge flow clean. The tip stays stout enough not to break at bone. The base stays wide to anchor in your grip. The surface still holds the scar of flakes taken away, the record of the hole. You do not erase it, since it shows how the blade was born. You slide a pair of hand axes into your backsling, edge to edge so they do not chip. Bodies cushioned by a ring of soft bark so they do not tap your spine. Beside you, a stack of the best large flakes goes into a separate pouch. They are afternoon blades. Teeth for your hand when time runs tight. The hammerstone returns to its place. The battered face turned to the sky like a promise for next time. The sandstone for grinding leans to a big rock to dry. The quarry returns to its order, except a new ring of flakes lies on the ground. Brighter than the old, thin as onion skin. Shadows shorten on the stone. The air, still hot, writhes less. Strikes come fewer. A pair of teardrop hand axes rests in your sling, edges the length of your hand, ready to leave the river step and go to the afternoon's tasks. Behind you, the gravel lies quiet, waiting for tomorrow's hands to lay more stone answers on the ground. High sun turns the earth into a tight drum. The smell of quartz dust folds into dry grass. The rhythm stays even, yet each blow now feels like a stamp pressed into time, clear and intent. A new cobble of quartzite turns into your palm, the centre of mass sitting right in your hand. The platform you have made is flat and clean. The ankle between platform and core face not too wide, or flakes will shatter. Not too narrow, or the force will skid. Your body holds a bow-like stance. Your arm lets go a short, crisp shot. A large flake lifts, leaving a small bulb at the root and even ripples spreading forward. All of it saying the strike was right. As the teardrop grows, balancing the faces becomes a kind of conscious breath. Each time you take a flake on this side, your eye has already chosen the mirror flake on the other. The mid-ridge need not be arrow straight. It can arc gently so the edge runs smooth. You lower the last steps along the sides, like peeling a fruit. Outer crust cracked and hard, inner layer cool and sleek. A margin too toothy is corrected by a string of light edge blows until your fingertip glides and finds a single continuous blade. At the bar's edge, a cluster of bright flakes lies separate. They are thin, sharp-nosed, broad-bodied with straight margins, like leaves shed from the core. You keep them for the afternoon, for skinning, for splitting sinew, for parting fibres. A thicker flake with a slightly blunt edge is set aside for scraping, on live hide or bark. A strong-angled piece waits to wedge a joint when you need to pry. A triangular piece is set for teasing marrow from a socket. A culin wastes nothing. The core is a tool. The flake is a tool. The quarry is a part store laid open on the earth. The signs of a day's work write themselves as arcs of flakes. Where the napper sat, the pieces are many, large, and fresh. A few steps off, the flakes are smaller, older, perhaps from yesterday or the day before. A smooth strip along the sandstone edge shows someone spent a long hour right there tuning margins. A shallow clean hollow where grass is thin marks the place heavy cores were set again and again. Future archaeologists, if they stood here, could read a working axis, picture a handedness, see which way the body turned, what core shapes were favoured, whether a heavy or a light hammerstone was loved. The sequence rises as a wordless story, written by ripples on fracture faces, written by fine dust in stone grooves. Learning at the quarry needs no long speech. The elder sits in shade, back to a stone, eyes narrowed, reading sunbands for angle. The novice is close enough to breathe the same dust, close enough to hear the tiny difference between a right strike and a skewed one. A good blow sounds like dry seeds falling into an empty gourd, round, clipped, without drag. A bad blow sounds like stone in mud, dull, clunky, leaving a poor scar. The elder corrects with rhythm, not with words. The core is set, the new hand placed where it should be. When the grip is weak, a soft touch on the wrist fixes the stance. A fresh flake goes into the young hand so they feel weight. Hear the edge breathe when it brushes skin. At noon, one group brings fire into a quiet task. Embers are drawn to the bar's rim, not for cooking, rather to warm a few stubborn stones. You do not always need it, and not every place offers it. Yet when a stone is damp, cold, and brittle, that warmth softens the cortex and invites a cleaner release. Each cobble is brought near the embers, not into flame, taking only the breath of heat. The stone gives a faint sound as warmth moves in, like a soft sigh. The firekeeper stirs the coal bed with a long branch so heat runs even. Eyes never leaving the stones being warmed. Some wait quickly, some are slow. Patience is part of craft and part of safety. Beside this, a big basalt core is worked in another way. Weight gives you large flakes, but if the platform is wrong, the piece will snap. The worker braces the core against the thigh, lifts the hammerstone higher than usual, opens the strike angle wider. The flake shears like bark off a trunk, leaves a face with thicker ripples, yet tough. Those pieces are chosen now for bone splitting at dusk or as wedges for prying. Every material demands its own meter, and that meter lives in the worker's body like a song without words, heard, and the hand obeys. As noon thins, the quarry grows busy in another sense. It is not only striking and grinding, it is arranging the hours to come. Hand axes are wrapped in rings of bark or in dry hide, edges turned inward so they will not nick one another. The thinnest cutters are stacked at the pouch mouth, ready to be drawn without looking. Everyone carries a small personal set, one thin hand axe, one thick, 3 cutting flakes, 1 scraper, 1 wedge, a cobble for a light hammer. Good cores not yet finished are split among the stronger shoulders so they can be worked nearer the job and not weigh the walk. This is how the stone store travels with you, so a new blade can be born anywhere. There is a rhythm for placing tools on your body. The hand axe rests on the offside so your dominant hand stays free to draw. Small cutters lie in the front pouch by your belly. The quickest place for your hand when a surprise task shows itself. The light hammerstone tucks at your back, pressed to the sling so it makes no sound when you move. The thin grinding slab stays at the common cache, a tool of the band, not of one person. When all is in place, the quarry no longer looks cluttered. It is clean like a swept floor, with rings of flakes left like the age rings of a cut tree. A breeze passes, quartz dust lifts and settles. Your skin changes feel as sweat dries, a fine salt prickle. In the hush, insects thread their sounds into the thinning knocks. At the rim, a child rolls a broken hand axe to watch the curve. Those eyes learn to read fracture faces like pictures, to foresee where a flake will travel by angle alone. The body is copying a very old alphabet, the alphabet of stone, into muscle and tendon. You set the sling strap on your shoulder. What stands out now is not fatigue, it is readiness. From an unnamed gravel bar, edges have been born and sorted. On the earth, a stone logbook of half a day lies open for any passerby to read. The sun has shifted a little. Your shadow draws short and close. From here the path goes toward shade, toward water, toward the afternoon's work, with a pair of teardrop hand axes lying quiet in your sling, and a handful of cool cutters waiting their tasks. These are not only tools, they are time hardened into edge, thought sealed into curve. The band's voice living in a stone that rests obedient in your hand. The sun eases from harsh white toward honey. On ground flecked with bark and quartz dust, the picture of the half-day is full. The rings of flakes do not mix at random. They line up in a chain of tasks, opening a blank, tuning an edge, taking large flakes, lowering steps. Where pieces are big, thick, and the scars run deep lies the beginning. Where leaf-thin flakes with fine ripples lie is the end. One face of the sandstone shines from many passes, telling that someone sat patient there, rubbing little teeth down into one line. A silent refit puzzle turns in your head. 2 flakes meet, their fracture waves in step. If someone gathers enough and sets them in order, A portion of the core could live again on the floor. Reading like this is trekking old choices, like walking back a path the wind has half covered. No letters are needed, on only your eyes and hands, to hear the heartbeat of the work. Fast then slow, heavy then light, each with its reason. A thin hand axe is ready for testing. The margin runs from shoulder to tip, curved like a young moon. A fingertip laid lightly tells you it is not a metal sharpness. It is the stone's bite. It does not slice skin, it grips it, so that when you draw it on hide, the cut will travel where you intend. A thicker hand axe, full-bellied, waits for digging roots and splitting bone. It feels heavy in the hand, the balance near the neck, so a short swing delivers force right onto the edge. The thin cutters are chosen. Each is only 2 finger joints long, yet keen enough that even a sheet of dry hide snags to its touch. One straight for long scores, one slightly arched to work around sinew. A thick, strong-angled piece lies ready for wedge work. When a joint will not open, it bites like a small pin, then a heavy cobble taps, the joint pops, and marrow shows like a pale thread. You bend and gather what will serve, thus sorting them into groups, each with its reason. Your hand remembers without looking which pouch holds which pocket keeps which piece at the mouth. Your personal set now feels like a silent music box, and with the lightest touch the right note presents itself. At the water's margin, 2 people are still opening blanks from large quartzite cores. They do not rush to the teardrop. The aim is balance blanks and lighter to carry so they do not steal your strength. A blank is not a finished hand axe. Yet give it a cool spot under leaves and 10 precise blows, and a long margin will appear. This is the art of moving. The good mineral sleeps here, the job waits elsewhere. So stone must become a thing that can keep growing wherever you are. A firekeeper teases the ember bed and tests the warm draught with a palm. You do not always bring fire to the work, yet when the wind is dry and stone is damp, heat loosens the skin and a flake leaves clean like a leaf from a twig. Fire now is more than warmth and ward. It is a fine tool that helps stone obey. No one names this out loud, yet everyone knows the order of fire warm enough. Not so hot that flame eats the stone, not so cold that the stone pops. That knowledge rides with a smoke that scents hair and skin, and with the crease lines at the eyes from squinting at the glow. A basket opens. Inside lie braided bark cords, a few dry skins, a grinding slab flat as a leaf blade. 2 freshly finished hand axes slide in. Edges turn toward each other with a layer of fresh leaves between them to keep them from knocking. Small cutting flakes sit in the front sling where a slight bow reaches them. The light hammerstone tucks at your back, pressed to the sling so it stays quiet when you run. A basalt core still heavy, though much waste has gone, is given to the widest shoulders. Everyone knows the weight will come back as softer bites when the sun goes down. When you stand, the quarry shows like a drum right after a phrase. Scattered across it are lines in stone platforms polished bright as fish eyes. Little bulbs at the roots of breaks. Steps lowered one by one, telling someone had patience. A dark stain beneath a shrub marks the sweat that fell from an arm bracing a core. A stranger passing this afternoon would see only shattered rock. Someone of tomorrow was walking with reading eyes, would see a whole session, who sat where, which hand ruled, when fatigue forced a change of stance, when pleasure sped the hands. Bodies begin to slip from the bar. Prints follow the waterline where grass runs low from many passes. No one throws gear aside. Only old flakes remain, like dry leaves from a breathing crown. The dust smell that was heavy now thins, mixing with the scent of water warming at noon. In your ears the stone beats fade and give way to the steady veil of cicadas. Your hands still hum with the strikes, as if your body repeats the motion away from the stone. At a short stop in open woods, a thin hand axe comes from the sling, its edge set on dry wood, 1 test pull. Woodmeal falls like chalk. The margin stays whole, unchipped. A small cutter touches dry bark-wrapped fibre. The score goes straight without wander. Trust in new tools is like carrying water across a thirsty stretch. The hours ahead will need them perhaps a big root, perhaps a thick hide, perhaps a stubborn joint from an animal down since morning. You touch the pouch mouth to feel the order, then tighten the strap. The way back is not far, yet uneven ground can turn a wrong-pointed edge into hurt. Stone's lesson is not only how to strike right, it is how to stow right. Edges in a pouch are like teeth in a mouth out when needed, hidden when not. In shade your sweat is cool. Dust films your skin so that when you wipe, your palm knows your skin is not the skin of dawn. Behind you, the quarry holds the shape of a rest. On the ground, rings of flakes look like the wood grain of a cut stump. They wait for rain, for wind, for passing hooves to scatter them, for other seasons to lay over them. For now they remain like an open ledger, recording how noon turned rough stone into edge. You step into the day's first patch of shade. Sunlight on the quarry shortens to the ground behind you. Water sounds to your left. There you will wash your hands, brush the dust away. Drink once before you turn home. In your sling, 2 teardrop hand axes lie quiet. Edges the length of your hand. They say nothing, yet in their hush you hear a chain of decisions made. Each decision is a blow, each blow a thought. Each thought now sits ready, like a prow turned toward the afternoon's work. The band walks until the quarry is only a pale stripe in the grass. A bird wheels past, its shadow runs over the ground. Thin as a blade, at the nape of your neck a small pride rests, not loud, like a knot pulled tight just right. Half a day at the quarry is done, yet the after-sound sits in tendons, in breath, in the tidy order of your sling. The stone story, told in the Ahulian way, has taken on a new chapter, closed with a thin light along the edge, opened with steps leaving the bar, down the old path toward water, toward hunger ready to be met by the very blades born from this noon. Heat shimmers into a thin glass on the sky. The vulture ring tightens, black wings brushing mute marks across the blue silver. Below, a hollow of grass lies pressed into an oval around the big animal's cooled body. There are no roars, only flies weaving a steady curtain of sound, and the iron tang of blood mixed with the ripeness of sun. From a distance the band strides low, slipping with the wind. Each foot touches dry grass without a sound. You lower your sling so the weight sits close to your hip, one hand on the pouch mouth where 2 teardrop hand axes rest. Before you is the grassland's lesson fallen meat never belongs to a single species. Hyenas arrived first, their teeth left deep, round gnaws. Vultures stand in an outer ring, lifting their feet in side steps. Jackals tiptoe awkwardly along the edge. Noses working fast, dung beetles roll glossy black balls, each one a little turning seed of dark. No one runs. The band waits for that nameless beat when the hyenas draw off to drink, or when they change their midday watch. Waiting has a clear shape. One person kneels on a knee to read the horizon. 2 stand behind low brush, eyes tracking the vulture's shadows to gauge the height of the circle. One lifts a heavy cobble and tests it in the hand, measuring the force for opening bone. Wind stirs the grass rim. Vultures slip from the ring, drop once, then veer. The hyenas have taken their share, the thick muscles of hip and shoulder are torn. The skin edge rolled back like a dry leaf. Yet the throat and the armpits, the deep soft places, and the big long bones remain. This is the portion for latecomers who know where to set an edge. You crawl low, heat of earth rising through your elbows. The smell of flies threads with old fat. A thin hand axe comes out of the pouch, its long margin laid lightly to the thick hide. Do not pull deep, only open a path through the sun-dried rind to find the right sliding plane. The move is taught by stone, follow the fibre, do not go against it. At the same time, the keeper of the heavy cobble steps to the rear knee joint, sets the stone in his right hand, tests the drop angle. Hyenas, a few dozen paces off, glance back but do not rush in. Their eyes understand noon's division of shares as clearly as humans do. The first knock is dry and certain. It is a check. The bone does not splinter, it hums once, telling you it is green, not rotten. The second blow shifts to avoid the old scar, the third falls true, and a crack opens like a fissure in ice. Meanwhile, your broader stone blade slips under the hide's lip and finds the sinew's hold. Fat shows ivory white. Flies thicken in a layer, yet the edge runs steady without snatch. Your other hand holds skin away so the margin stays keen. Competition across species is not loud, it is a tight orchestra. Vultures wait at safe reach to thrust long heads into places people cannot. Jackals trace figure eights at the rim. Dung beetles keep at their work under every foot. Each takes a portion in the order their bodies allow. Humans step into the narrow slot between, later than the beast, finding what is left by tool. Soon thin strips of meat lie neat on a pad of hide. The lookout changes, takes 2 steps up onto a low rise. eyes glued to the far reeds where a rustle could be wind, or the dappled chin of a leopard. No calls, only hand signs and small nods. The hearth, far off, where elders and children sit, waits for soft parts and marrow. The band knows the carry order clean throat cuts, gathered shreds into a pouch, and the big long bones opened here to lighten the way. You set the hand axe down for a breath and turn to the joint. The heavy cobble has done its work. The crack runs to the rim. A small cutting flake replaces the axe, wedges in. One short strike, the bone pops, marrow shows like a pale ivory thread, soft and cool. The bearer offers a pouch lined with fresh leaves. The spoon is the flake itself, and the action is learned more by feel than by sight. A deep mild richness rises and folds into sun-scorched grass, a rare fullness at hard noon. Above, the wing circle thins. You glance up to take the shadow's measure. The sun has slid a little off the peak. It is not time to leave, yet each move must quicken. There are other signs to read, other patches to use. On bone surfaces, deep hyena gnaw marks say they came first. The fine, parallel cuts you're about to lay down will say people arrived after, with stone edge and cobble. At noon, when heat makes the grassland waver like water, the long bone crack opens wider under the fourth cobble stroke. The break is clean, not crumbly. Marrow slides out as a soft pale ribbon, cool in burning air. The first piece goes into the leaf-lined pouch, tied with a thin strip of sinew pulled from the joint. The carrier bends low, spreads the leather strap across the chest to load the hips, saving the hands. One tiptoed lift. The bag rides from ground to shoulder, quiet as settling a stone back into its old hollow. The layers of trace on the carcass now show like an alphabet. At the shoulder head, hyena teeth cut deep crescents, the groove's rims slightly rough. On flatter bone, the human edge will leave narrow parallel lines with a wash of white, like shaving strokes on green wood. Near the place you opened, a small dimple marks the cobble's test point, and a fine scar lies where the flake slid. Thousands of years from now, someone will read these too, the way your eyes read them now to know first and after. Your view spreads around the patch. The bird ring loosens, shadows move slowly and with patience. Jackals count distance in short curved runs, bellies down when near, necks up to listen when far. People count as well, by hand rhythm and eye rhythm. One person slips by the head, holds the hide against the cut so the edge will not bind. Another stands canted toward the reeds, high enough to catch any odd motion in the grass. The band shifts like an unwritten circle, each position born from the next. The hand axe margin licks through silvery sinew at the armpit. The cut follows the grain and stops only where it meets bone. Fat slides along your fingers and clings like a fine powder. Noon presses, yet the opened soft part is cool as water. At the loin sits a pocket of fat that yields under touch and springs back. That share is for the hearth, where a black ring with old ash waits in shade and the fire is ready to be coaxed. The cobble keeper changes hands and moves from the knee to the other end of the long bone. Before he strikes, he lifts it and listens for solid or hollow. Solid means full, hollow means you have opened one end. The next blow drops into a natural little cup, the angle tuned by wrist so the break follows the line. Not a wild crack. A thin shell of bone flies off, the shiny edge like glass. In the ground, music of flies and wind. That sound is small, yet it makes everyone pause a beat to listen farther. There is nothing more than grass brushing grass. Loose meat is packed into another pouch and mixed with a little natural salt that gathers along the edge of a shallow pan nearby. The salt is not grains. It is a white film on earth, scraped thin like chalk. That soft brine will keep the meat a bit longer till afternoon. At the patch's head, the lookout points with a staff to a termite mound opened earlier. The tiny sign is good news. Recent rain means water held deep in roots, and fat roots within a few paces. You rinse the edge with wet grass, wipe it across a broad leaf, and stow it. Your free hand takes a digging stick. Ground baked by sun is hard on top and softens fast beneath. A cool scent rising like shade's own breath. The tip meets something pliant, a long shape the width of a child's wrist. You lift it, earth clinging in a brown coat, its flesh a butter yellow. One root, then another, pass to the carrier. In taller grass, small trees hold pale ripe fruits, astringent at first and then gentle as you chew, giving energy that needs no fire. Your body knows how to share energy. Marrow goes to elders and children to fill what bone asks for. Muscle and sinew go to those who need force for the afternoon. Roots and tart fruit go to everyone, a steady base for the way back. No talk is needed. Which pouch goes to whom is set by habit and place. Young shoulders take the heavier load, yet they walk ahead so they can return to meet the slow. Your shoulders carry a middle share, just enough to keep a hand free for the axe. At your neck, a dry sinew strap draws tight, steadying the bounce of your steps. Before leaving, you kneel and read the bone surface one last time. Your cut marks are deep enough. No need for more. The other species' gnaw does not cross into what you must take. Where hide remains, as it is for vultures and insects. Where it is clean, you rub a handful of dry earth to blur the scent, not to hide, but to remind yourself this meal is a share, not a claim. Even the richest fat is taken only until the pouch will not seep. A small shadow passes, not cloud, a wing dropping to choose a place. The ring above loosens and the whir of air thins. Noon's heat map starts to sag. The lookout lowers the staff and steps toward you. No signal is needed. The band slides into a staggered line, spacing just so that if one stumbles, the next can catch both body and bag. Along the rim, a run of laid grass lies parallel to the hyena's old path, the prints round and smeared with thick pads. Beyond that, the ground firms and the glare eases on your eyes. By low brush, another live sound reaches you. Termites rasping in a broken mound. After one slow count, a careful hand slips into the run, lifts the big winged one, and pours them into a small pouch. They will roast quick on the hearth's warm edge, their thin shells crisp and sweet. That crisp will balance marrow's soft richness. A lesson the grassland taught long ago: nothing should be eaten alone. Each thing pairs with another. One taste pulls the next. Not far from the carcass, a shallow pool lies clouded. Yet, it is enough to rinse your hands. Fine mud coats your wrists like a thin sleeve against sun, and in a few counted beats it dries to a pale crust. The edge is wiped again, this time with leaves that carry a light resin scent. That scent will leave your hands before you reach the hearth, so it will not tangle with smoke. Yet a thread will cling to your fingertips like a small memory. As you slope toward distant shade, the pattern shows like a map: two heavy carriers in the middle, hand axe bearers on the wings. The lookout ahead far enough to speak with hands and still turn back fast. At your left hip, the root pouch taps your thigh in even time. At your right, the leaf-lined marrow bag warms in the sun and keeps a cool heart. Across your shoulders, a thin strip of hide holds a few tart fruits. Across your chest, a dry sinew cord keeps the best cutter always within reach. Crossing bare ground, you see your shadow draw tight at your toes. The sun has passed its height. Ahead, the trail slips into scattered trees where the pitch of insects climbs and the wind smells cooler. The band does not speak. Breaths find a common measure. Each step adds a small sum of weight on the shoulder and a quiet joy. The proof of sharing. Somewhere behind, the vultures will finish and close the plains loop. Ahead, the hearth will round again when bodies sit, and noon's richness will become a story moving through nose, tongue, belly, and into bone. The path home runs the low ground where grass turns copper and a contrary wind brings a strange scent. Your feet fall like the savannah's heart. At the sky's edge, the vulture ring relaxes, wings sliding off noon's invisible pivot. The rustle in the reed beds is only wind drawing its lines now. The meal lies snug in leaf bags. Its weight changes how your back breathes, yet it is lighter than the feeling of safety. Everything settles, like water after a storm, not yet clear, no longer breaking. A bare patch opens ahead where old footfalls have pressed the floor flat. The old black stone ring sits in sun, the hearth's bed fine with ash-like skin polished smooth. Under grey, coals show a few red points, only a handful of dry twigs and an even breath, and a flame is born. Not for noise, only so a small tongue of fire can touch a smear of fat and wake the scent. Those who stayed fold in at the edge of shade, light falling in long bands across forearms, picking out pale calluses on axe hands. Bags open in the order everyone knows. Leaf-wrapped marrow rests near the coals, not touching, softening in the heat. Lean meat is shared. The chewier parts go to bodies that still want to run. A pale waxy knob of back fat goes straight to the eldest hands without a word. Eyes meet for a breath, long enough to know the division is right. No talk. Only fire-touching oil and wind moving through the mouth of leaves. The hand axe you used lies flat on a slab. waiting to be scraped. On its edge, small white streaks follow the line of muscle fibres. The way material tells its work. The half-open long bone sits aside. When split, the break shows a spiral, the rim glossy, the bone still wet. The sign of green bone opened while flesh was new. At the other end, the night feeder's teeth would leave jagged rims like dry leaf edges. Here the edge is smooth and straight. Proof that humans came first to that bit of bone. The writing of stone and bone is like stars, as silent and hard to mistake. A few winged insects from the mound are laid in a small ring at the ember's edge. When their skins turn clear, they give a sweet, smoky breath. Fine white dust from the salty patch is snapped onto a sheen of fat, not to salt it deep, only to wake the tongue. A few roots pulled earlier are cleaned with wet grass, set by the coals to warm the palms, then shared. No stomachs speak loud today. Energy comes by many paths that meet in one hollow. You sit a little off the hearth, your back on an old log. A thin thread of smoke crosses your face, warm rather than sharp. Your hands still hold the smell of fat, both raw and cooked, like a memory that is still unfolding. When you lift marrow to your mouth, richness spreads, a deep sweetness like fruit kept past ripe. The feeling does not rise to shouting. It settles as a quiet thankfulness, moves over your shoulders, sinks into your ribs, and widens each breath by half a finger. Noonlight draws off the hearth's rim. Shadows pull closer and link around a dim red centre. A young hand holds a new hand axe. The thumb runs the long ridge and stops where the margin turns to a round nose. It is the same move an older hand made not long ago. The stone's language travels through skin and passes by touch before it becomes thought. Nearby, the keeper of the heavy cobble opens his palm so another pair of eyes can study the round pits from recent blows. Little moons. Learning opens not with words, it opens by sharing surfaces. A bit farther on, two people rinse fat from their hands at the shallow pool. Fine mud coats the skin grey and dries quickly on the backs of hands. When the coat cracks, it shows small maps of the day sinew lines at the wrist. A fine scratch from a skittish shard. Small black specks of soft coal. It is how the body writes notes. By dark, those marks will fade into skin. Yet your hands will remember the edge's path longer than your mind. At the hearth's rim, a small bag of meat hangs near smoke. Not to cook, only to take scent and dry the skin. It is for the feet that will walk back to the site when the heat relaxes. A pinch of leaves picked before leaving the patch rests by the coals, only to let a thread of aroma pass and withdraw. There is no ritual, only the gentle care of people who live by feel. You lean back and scan the thin roof of leaves. Above, the sky's like a polished stone, colour sliding from hard blue to indigo. The pair of teardrop hand axes lies within sight, side by side like quiet animals resting together after an unhurried hunt. Each carries a piece of noon, the thud on bone, the flash as edge met sinew, the fat that flicked against stone. They do not speak, yet a field of hush surrounds them, the hush that slows the heart. When you stand to tie the bag, a feeling fine as a feather strokes your nape. Not wind, shelter, grass, sky, fire, stone, fat, salt, insects, each as a letter. Set in right order, they make a sentence, a wordless prayer rising and settling like heat off earth. The feeling is not one person's. It runs along the line, shoulder to shoulder, and makes the band one shape in space. Before leaving the hearth, you set the axe in the pouch, edge toward your body, tip up. Leaf wraps stack so their faces overlap, holding moisture within. Everything is belted with sinew, tight only enough that one hand can open it later. The elder holds the warm marrow, both palms lifting it like a soft light. The young take roots warmed by the coals. The middle, shouldered, share the muscle. The pattern is the morning's, only thicker now because the meal has moved into blood. The sun sinks slow, red lining the hearth's lip. Wings above, thin for good. The circle loosens like a line of smoke. On your hands, a light line of fat scent lingers, a soft reminder. The way back lengthens to your eyes, yet your feet feel light. Each step is a small flake shedding from the day behind. Ahead, tree shade links into a vault. Within it, a quiet night lies ready, set to fold over bodies at an easy pace. When the last strip of sun slides off the sight, the band moves, quiet and sure. The noon meal is passed into muscle, into glances, into the way bags swing in time. Silence now is not empty. It is thick, like resin sealing a healed cut, filling the places opened by heat, labour, and hunger. Far off, vultures have likely finished and handed the plane its closed loop. Close by, your palms remember Merrow's silk, your mind still hears green bone break, and your heart carries the gentle weight of having made it through, not by one person's strength, but by the band's shared memory. You walk among sun-browned backs and feel a faint line of fat scent in the webs of your fingers, a thread that draws you home. The path back to the hearth is behind you. Ahead, shade opens like the mouth of a kind cave. In this small hinge between light and dark, the noon-scavenged meal is no longer an event. It has become a new layer of bone, thin and warm, fitted inside the one who carries it. Wind shifts and the reeds pile into silver waves. The shallows ahead glitter with broken flecks of sun where your stride cuts the water. Noon slips behind you like a dried hide. Afternoon tilts forward, and the ground pulls long like a thread drawn tight between two far banks. From here to the thick trees at the hill's foot, you need even breath. No hurry as no broken rhythm, only a chain of steady strides, like a low drum sounding deep in the chest of the earth. Their gait runs long, spare, exact as a freshly tuned tool, bones thick, trunks balanced. Each step sets the centre of mass a shade forward, arms swinging easy to trade the wind off to either side. The heel meets. The soul is already ready to take the load. The steady pace makes the grass seem to drift back. Distance no longer overwhelms. It's only many breaths laid end to end. Broad backs and deep chests let air slide in and out without noise. You walk inside that file, and feel your body as a vessel built for distance, durable without fanfare. Across your back ride leaf bags slung on soft sinew, holding the food taken and half-prepared cores. They do not weigh heavy, because the band has chosen to carry only what must be carried. Tool logistics is not a moment's thought. It is a quiet system that follows each edge. At the gravel bar at noon, instead of finishing everything there, they kept the cores at a just-so stage, platforms already struck, removal directions already set, attack angles cleared like a promise. When you stop later, only a few right blows and thin flakes slip from the body like fish scales. This way saves load, since free flakes weigh less than a full core. It saves time, since the reference faces already exist and need not be found again. Inside the sling, the cores are padded with dry grass and soft leaves so they will not nick each other. Each core holds a private story in ridges and faint batter marks, and the afternoon's work is to read the story line by line. The path ahead cuts a dip between taller swathes of grass. Sun on the water trembles into fine bands. Beneath, mud mixed with sand feels like the meat of ripe fruit. No one goes straight in. The lead walker uses a probing staff, presses down slow, tests the give and pull of the bottom. Where the stick goes down and lifts clean, where mud does not cling, that is where feet will set. Where the stick quivers soft like breath, they mark it with a snapped reed to avoid. Crossing shallows is not only for cool, it is a lane with less scent on the wind, hard for noses to trail. Water washes sweat and fat away, and tracks on mud disappear when the grass waves push the surface back in. You lift the tool bag clear of the water with a strap across your chest. One hand closes the mouth, sheltering the exposed stone. Knees meet the cool, soft mud hugs the ankles and releases as you step. The cores brush once, a little double tap that says they are still there. In your other hand, the probing staff goes ahead a half a body, tapping a low beat. It feels like writing a long line across the water. A line leg and staff alone can read. Bodies link into a cord, each person a handspan apart. Water rises to mid-calf, then falls away. Cords stand at your neck with each breath, yet no one rushes. All movement feels as if listening for something just under the surface. The water narrows just ahead. The grass opens into a low bank with set stones. This is a fit place to raise shelter if the sky changes its mind, if wind brings the scent of rain, or if dark arrives sooner than planned. On open grass, shelter is never a wall. It is a way to arrange the wind. Branches lean into a low trunk. A small stone props the foot so you do not load the roots. A thin windbreak woven from pale reeds. All of it enough to stop the hard gusts at the chest and to make a warm pocket where breath can fall without being carried off. Not long, not elaborate. Enough. They do not build yet. Afternoon time belongs first to movement. The first materials are kept in mind with place. A crosswise limb with cracked bark sits 3 paces from the water's edge. A flat slab lies by the grass line like a table. A dense reed patch grows in rows downwind. You file them in your head, like marks on a map under the skin. When you return, one lift of the hand and the limb will roll into place. A higher bar of earth raises the path so water only touches the ankles. To your right, a slick seam of black silt flashes like the shadow of some old beast. The way shifts from wading to steps on damp ground. The cadence changes a shade. Water sounds give to the crackle of dry earth. Underfoot, a skin of dry leaves mixed with grit breaks into tiny letters. Those letters share one meaning: continue. The sky now feels like the inside of a big shell, a hell gold glowing from behind. In the distance, a dense clump of trees will be tonight's stop. That patch breaks wind well, offers fallen limbs, and on the ground, picture in your head, it is where fine slabs for edge dressing tend to lie. The trees also give another thing closed sound. Close to trunks, night arrives slower and lighter, not striking the ear like it does in open. Elders and young need that hush so sleep does not break. To reach it, the band keeps the same even measure as at the start, no more, no less. Like fish that follow a warm current, your staff touches a submerged step of stone, hard and sure. You pause half a beat and signal back with the smallest wrist turn. The next walker looks up, nods, and plants a foot right there. The sign runs backward and disappears, yet its effect stays, like a little trap set in earth for your own kind, not for others. On your left flank, reeds still shove into waves, now more silver since the sun sits lower. Water throws shifting scales of light onto your forearms. Keeping tools above flood has become a figure in the walk's music lift. Hold, set, adjust. No one misses a beat. When the last narrow of mud falls away and firm ground shows, the band stops for one short silent second. Not a rest, a recording. The body keeps the feel of wading. The staff keeps the map of sunken stones. The head keeps the smell of deep mud, so that another pass in dark will not bring surprises. Then you move again. Each step adds a breath warmed by the slanting light ahead. At the hill's foot, the bank offers a palm-wide flat. Wind here shifts and weakens, patted by the tree line. Stones lie scattered, a few slabs smooth as fish skin. Dry sticks sit in the leaf fall, no deep search needed. This will be the stop. No one tells anyone. Places open like a large arm. Space divides by task the way water chooses rills. Foodwork stands by a scarred trunk where the ground dips to catch fat and soft grass takes leaves. Stonework takes the patch with a flat slab for a table and enough light to read a core. The elders and the very young rest where the wind is buttoned by trees. Just behind the thin windbreak that will rise soon. You set the core bag at the slab's edge and open it. The nodules lie in a neat line like a clutch of eggs. Your fingers pass each prepared face, looking for the next removal. A shallow V at this corner will free a long flake along the set path. A round dimple on the other face as a last strike skidded, and the angle needs change. You lift the hammerstone, weigh the familiar mass, strike the air to hear its note. A dense, sure thud says ready. Across the way, other hands check the leaf basket, choose broad, thick leaves for lining. Noses test leaves for resin scent. Choosing leaves is its own kind of reading. The windbreak goes up first. 2 long poles bite firm into ground, their feet chocked with small stones so weight will not press the roots. Reeds are braided between, their bodies pressed into a plane that takes wind well. Not high. Does not need to be. Only enough to drop one layer of wind and cast new shade. Behind it the soil changes fast. The surface chill is gone. The hiss past the ear is gone. A pocket opens like a shell for tired bodies to step into. In the food corner, what remains of noon's meal comes out with a few roots and insects gathered. Empty long bones sit carefully on leaves, ready for the last marrow. Among them, a bundle of grass holds thin cuts dusted with earth salt and hangs low to catch cool air. None of this becomes a grand feast. It is a continuing beat, where fire prepares to add one warm line to an afternoon cooling down. The stone corner begins to speak. One right blow, a thin flake frees and lands on the slab with a clear note. Its edge runs long like a tight stream. Your fingertip follows the grain without pressing, so the bite stays sharp. The flake turns a few times, then drops to a separate basket. The core flips. The point is chosen. faces balance by small degrees. The nose rounds under light taps so it will not chip easily. A pair of hand axes appears before your eyes, each like a teardrop set, ready for cutting, digging, splitting. Along the slab's rim, chips gather into a halo. That halo tells about strike direction, handedness, a worker's patience. It is tomorrow's logbook for an archaeologist, and today's tool for the living. In the quietest corner behind the screen, an elder lowers the back and settles. A child plays with a reed, its skin rustles softly, like grass mailing little notes to itself. A hand rests on the small head, not tight, only enough to say a roof imagined now stands. These small moves come from no single lesson. They are the result of many afternoons like this one, of standing in wind and stepping behind a screen, of sleeping in dreams without losing the sound of breath to the gusts. You walk the camp's corners to check. Here the branches are pulled close, feet braced with stones. There the flat slab is faced to catch the last light and let it slide across new edges, helping eyes read flakes. In the middle, the hearth will stand far enough from the screen that smoke lifts and does not blow into the elder's place. A low ring of stone sits not as a wall but as a rim to keep ash from drifting and to give the flame a shoreline. Look down and the hearth patch is already smooth from many hands rubbing together in silence. Evening gathers faster whenever wind turns to the hills. Gold lifts off the roots, runs up the trunks, then the branches. At the cold hearth mouth, stone faces begin to glow warm with reflected light, as if coals already live under grey. Calm comes on slow, like a thin blanket pulled over ankles. A pinch of dry grass waits outside the ring, ready for a spark. Straight, slim twigs lie beside it, laid by length so hands need not search in dark. On the grinding slab, the two new hand axes rest side by side, edges turned inward, noses tipped a little up. Each holds the evening shine, the way rock holds water in a seam. In the food corner, root pieces cut short, insects turn clear, and a split bone yawns to show the last of the marrow. In the rest spot, an elder adds leaves under the back and lifts a hand with a small sign that all is warm enough. Little things add to a whole that is not large but is strong. The afternoon, with the miles behind and the work just done, feels like a cord pulled to right tension, taut without snap, elastic without slack. You sit at the hearth's edge and touch stone that glows, and the skin of your palm seems to change colour to match. Air has turned. The wind does not want to test you any longer. It lies down somewhere behind the screen so people can do the rest. One deep breath in, and the far grass seems to shift back a pace. The day has leaned fully. Fire is about to be made. Stone near the hearth takes on the colour of quiet night. A twist of dry grass cups in your palm. You roll it light so the fibres catch. Settle it on the stone ring. Two dry sticks work each other in a measure learned across many seasons. Grass whispers, plant smell warms. A thin smoke appears, and fire begins as a small gold eye. Slim twigs lay across the grass. The draught through reed gaps beds the flame upright. From a hush, fire changes to a steady breath. The warm ring pulls everyone a half step closer. Firelight deepens stone to red. On the flat you set a core by the coal's rim to warm slow. Heat walks inward without haste. A warmed core breaks along the path you intend. Flakes come thin and tough. Evening blows take less effort, and your head can read grain instead of fighting it. The two just-finished hand axes lie together and now pass their margins across a piece of fine sandstone to clear away thin burrs. Each time they turn, the edge throws a slender streak of gold like plating on a fish's spine. The food corner speaks first. Thin leaf-lined cuts move nearer fire, not into flame, only where heat passes and fat runs just enough to glaze. Long bones rest on two small stones. Flame licks beneath. Marrow melts rich and fragrant. Peeled roots set at the coal's lip. Skins blister. Hearts soften. The insects gathered at noon are dried. Small protein. Tidy to keep. Enough to feed the night stretch. You tilt a bone and marrow trails onto leaves in a dark band. One finger crosses it and the fat taste washes the last mud out of your throat. Evening light climbs into the upper branches. Tool logistics continues as a layout for night. Half-finished cores are sorted in sequence. Nodules for thin cutters stay close to the sitting place. Those for thick flakes sit a little farther so hands will not confuse them. A heavy hammerstone rests at the foot, out of reach for little ones. Debris is raked to one side into a hard collar around the slab, neat and less slick underfoot. You lift each freed flake and test edge angle and curve. Pieces good for skin go in one basket. Pieces for teasing sinew get a tiny rub mark on the back. Motions run even and quiet, like stitching the day closed. Behind the screen, and in the elders' and children's space, the lining thickens with dry leaves. 2 branches span a simple rack for hanging skin bags clear of damp. Light, crucial things sit high, and at hand a spare ember in case, tempered flakes, drying sinew cord. Every band has its way to mark where things live. Here it is a white cobble set by the rack foot, so a fingertip can find it in the dark. You lay your palm on the cobble and feel cool smoothness against the fire's warmth, a pairing that helps the mind keep the map in night. The fire is sure now. From the warm centre, rings of task run out in 4 directions. In orange glow, faces gain another layer of calm. The Windwatcher moves and chooses a perch with a view beyond the reeds. A hand touches your shoulder lightly and lifts away. That sign means no rain tonight. Thin cloud, maybe a late moon. Fair weather means a thin screen is enough, no extra bracing. Spare straight sticks are saved for morning to burn down into fine edge-grinding ash. In the food corner, sharing happens without words. The softest, easiest to chew goes to worn jaws. Marrow is counted to match the children. Each piece passes on a short twist of the wrist and meets an answering look. The oldest language may be the way food is given and taken. You break a cooked root and white steam pops, sweet, like clean earth. The taste soothes the belly after the stretch of water and mud. When stomachs are quiet, hands return to stone. The warmed core lifts from the coal rim to the slab. An old removal edge becomes the new platform. You set a point, raise the hammerstone, and strike. A thin flake slides free like a scale slipping from a fish, lands ringing clearer than before. The edge works supple and resists fracture. Heat has done its part. You turn the core to the other face and rebalance the teardrop so when you hold it, no grip bites your palm. Nearby another arm rounds a hand axe nose on fine stone so it will not crack when it bites earth to dig roots. Space divided by work has settled. At the edge of the light, someone checks the way in and out, closes the eyes a moment so the ear can read the band of sounds without light's pull. What scent rides the wind, and what the ground says under a shift of weight, whether any wing flies low in a strange way. Smell and hearing are the first fence before any wall. Across from that, the waterkeeper sets leaf vessels in the coolest place. Not too near the fire, so they will not lose to steam. So morning keeps enough. Children cling to the reed screen and listen to the hush like waves. Their eyes begin to fold. You check the night stores one more time, a pinch of live ember held in the hollow of a dry log and capped with wet clay so it will not die. Ready to carry if you must leave fast. A bundle of fine reeds by the draft opening, so a weak flame will take at once. A spare core untouched in case a main axe chips at a bad hour. Everything sits where habit has put it, so a hand can find it blind. The sky's pale edge deepens. The moon's clipped rim hangs like a fresh fingernail low among trunks. Insects change their shift. Their calls stretch and even. Fire throws moving shadows on the reed wall that look like thin letters. These letters do not read with eyes. They read with the slowing beat of hearts near the flame. One day, the ash patches and chips here may tell a stranger that there was an afternoon like this, a band like this, a circle of work like this. Tonight they are simply proof of calm. You change your seat and let your back lean to the screen. Warmth answers from dry reed behind you, while in front, fire speaks in small, steady pops. 2 hand axes ride in the sling, edges turned inward, noses up. The day's probing staff leans on a branch within easy reach. A small stone rolls under your toe as a marker for your seat, so if you spring up in dark, your body still knows where it is in space. Such small things make the safety of people who build no walls and simply arrange wind to suit. Once more, you tilt the last bone tube and the leftover marrow runs thick. The fat scent blends with roasted roots and warm reed into the smell of a finished afternoon. Fire eats into a larger log. Coals settle into a steady red, enough to hold a long watch without much tending. You pick a tiny coal and touch its point to the slab to draw a very fine black line. Not for letters, only to learn whether the ember is dry enough. The line lay smooth, not crumbly, a good sign for sketching a few quick guides on the slab before the next blows. In the quietest corner, the elder's shoulders soften. A child pillows a head on a kin arm and breath shifts from ragged to even. A night bird dips and rises without sound. At the camp's edge, the first watcher takes position, open air ahead. Watchers will turn by the sink of coals, each changes a small nod. No one speaks. The language for this work is older than words. By now evening has pressed into a warm core. You look across the work rings and see each is closed. Fire firm, stone set, food warm in hand, shelter breaks wind, elders easy, young near sleep, paths in and out under eyes, night with a person waiting at the rim. Everything is placed like the balanced faces of a hand axe. A longer breath leaves your chest. On the hearthstone, the warm tint has turned the colour of ripe coal. Night arrives on soft feet. You extend your hand toward the fire and your pulse slows to the tick of the coals. In this settled picture, a fine current begins to move into the day's last stretch, where sleep, watch, and very small night sounds will speak. Coals sink, light loses gold and turns to deep red like a slow heart. Outside, wind brushes reed faces into an even hush. The camp's edge is steady. The reeder roof throws a thin cover, enough to cut chill as night draws down from the water. On levelled ground, bed places take another layer of dry grass. The probing staff stands to a branch, its tip aimed at the way out. Everything sits in place like a spine built from darkness. The quiet watch change happens. The new guard steps into the bright rim and stands where firelight kisses the grass tips. Spine straight without strain, ears to far, nose to near. Each breath drags night scents across the septum and sorts wet grass. Old mud, warm wood, animal skin, and any strange thread if it exists. Eyes do not yet see more, yet already know the winds turn from the water up high. With that direction that the shelter faces right, smoke pulls one way and not into sleep. Night favours you. Near the fire the last tasks close. A newly dressed blade is wiped clean with dry grass so fine ash does not cling to the edge. Thin skinning flakes nest in a skin pouch divided by flat dried leaves. A palm of bright coals is clamped in a hollow log and capped with clay near the exit. That is the contingency flame. A spare core sits by the feet of the sleeper at the rim, so if you leap up the hand meets the right thing. No words, but the silence is dense with old reminders. The sky opens full. Points show as eyes give up the fire's hold. The star shapes carry no names here, yet their geometry is the most durable speech. Through the roof gap a brief streak falls, like a flake flying when you strike just right. No one counts. No one asks anything. It is only another sign added to the night's picture, the mark of a moment when the body shifts from labour to rest. The first sleep settles on those who tire sooner. Elders lie near fire, backs to the screen, faces inward, feet pointed to the way out, a posture both warm and sure. Children curl into small knots, hands across a kin chest. Their first breaths flutter and then slow until they match the soft tick of coals. Marrow slick left on hands dries into a thin windproof film. Even in sleep the body keeps what helps. You do not sleep at once. In half-light, one last round of checks happens more by hand than eye. The low edge of the screen lifts a little so dew will not gather and fall on a throat. A stone wedges under a post foot to brace against the wind. Skin bags on the rack slide a half-hand span deeper. A loose reed is plaited with a strip of sinew into a quick latch. Small work, yet each small knot is a thin layer of safety. At the rim, the watcher changes stance, from standing to a squat that lowers the centre and lifts the ear. Night sound thickens by one layer like a blanket with extra thread. A twig snaps far off and cuts a fine line in the air. The whole body answers like an axe touching hard stone. Stop. Listen. Measure. You wait long enough to tell the scuffle of small beasts from steps that could bring trouble. The sound does not return. Only the water beats a far bank, steady as someone hand-grinding an edge. Fire drops farther. Coals spread like a root web. You use a small branch to pull a line of red toward the rim where the watcher stands so the warmth kisses the toes. Not bright enough to give away the place. Warm enough to keep joints from stiffening. Inside, sleepers turn. Small rustles meet like stone brushing dry grass. No sigh breaks allowed. Old habit has taught everyone how to lie without jarring the night. In the dim of coal light a thought clears like a clean edge. The body has learned how to go far, how to use fire, how to read wind and water. Each skill is a new sinew, joining joints. Distance walking sets feet to even strides. Hands to just enough swing, neither drag nor snatch. Shallow crossing trains eyes to read bottoms as fast as they read a core face. Shelter work teaches hands to find the right join between branch and reed. Keeping fire teaches the heart how to know a calm rhythm. All of it binds together and makes a human frame built to go, to raise ye, to wait, to sleep without falling off the world's rim. The shorter sleep belongs to the ones who have just come off watch. They lie near the edge, a hand still on the tool bag. The sleep is shallow, yet deep enough that the brain wakes without fog. Outside, Waterlap's mud bank and a cold scent creeps in, touches feet first, then the back. Fire answers with a soft pop, a small ascent. In that space, the shape of tomorrow begins to form, not as words. As blocks of image, the gravel bar across the water, a dry quarry to fetch more cores, the hard pale lines on earth that show where animals went, a root clump worth digging deeper. Midnight, and the watch turns. A hand touches a forearm, enough to pull a guard from the dream's edge. The post shifts by a half circle, no foot on coals, no staff knocked over. With each turn an invisible list is scanned windline. Scent sources, ember stash, spare core, staff place, way out. The run to water if you must. The highest bank's direction. Where these sit in the dark is the city map for a people without walls. Each person carries that map in a body. A short gust pushes smoke down low. Reeds tremble and the thin roof holds. The afternoon's braids were right. You feed a heavier limb into the coal heart and hear the fire receive it with a small crack. Across the camp, a snort slides by from a night animal. Not leopard, not serval, likely a boar. The scent is not thick. The steps do not press. There is no pause to test you. Fire does its work, not by light, by smell, and by the old memory other species carry of heat that can burn skin. Night insects keep crossing the roof peak like a small star rain. Once more you check the tool bag by hand. 2-hand axes lie quiet in shadow, edges turned inward by unwritten rule. The thin flake for skinning sits where the hand knows its shape. The heavy hammerstone rests where it cannot roll, its base flat. The probing staff stands where the watcher can take it in one move. Each thing is an answer to a silent question if you must leave now. What does the body need first? When that question no longer hangs, sleep comes easier. Deepest night thins. At the water's rim, a wash of very pale light peels the horizon from treetops. Birds release the night caught in their throats, one thread at a time. On the coals, small bright eyes live again, half open. The last watch turns to a slow walk around the camp's edge. Nose keeps its work, ear keeps its work, and eyes start to take form back in. Reed tips bead with dew, each drop like a small stone. The waterline falls a notch and leaves a fine rule on the bank. No fresh prints, a good outcome. You rise before light reaches your eyes. Knuckles fold and unfold in order, foot tendons pull and loosen. The body leans forward as if picking itself off the ground. There is not yet light to know each other's faces, yet the motions fit. An orchestra without sound. Coals are pulled to a small pile to bring up flame. Water from leaf jars pours a little into a wood shell, warm enough to slap to your face. Night's scent drains away slow and the morning scent arrives. Before flame climbs again, there is a thin silence. The body knows it is alive, whole, warm, with hands to dress stone, with feet to go, with eyes to read cut on bone and bend in grass. In that pause everything is quiet like a stone face wiped clean. The feeling does not need a name, it needs only breath. First grey plates the reed edges and folds over the water like a thin skin. Fire lifts again from red to gold without urging, one by one, eyes open. Mouths move a little to ease the dry. A small nod between people makes greeting. No words. Children stretch, curl once, and open like leaves. An elder lifts a head. The hand seeks the white cobble, finds it, releases. Twig bones shift underfoot and announce the first steps of a new day. You hoist your sling and check the 2-hand axes once more. Edges the length of your hand, margins even. Weight right. The probing staff still in place, the spare core resting. The ember kept in the hollow log still warm. The reed screen you leave to the morning wind, not cleared clean, so the trace can tell the next passer that a quiet night stood here. Stone trash is swept to a corner. A pale rind of chips will tell a day's labour if someone comes by in a few seasons. Overhead the bright ring grows. Vultures have not yet risen, which means last night's carcass lies far or is gone. The water's edge is calm. No new foam. The crossing shows clear in the early light. The line of bodies draws out into a soft rope and moves where you chose. Strides are long, arms hold tools high from water, eyes read bottoms as ears read banks. Life clicks back into gear the way flame turns coals to tongues. Evening taught a quiet night. A quiet night prepares a day that goes far again. As you step from the windbreak's mouth, you turn back for one short beat. Stone by the hearth has cooled and still holds a faint warm hue. Faint prints in pressed reeds look like temporary writing. Nothing else is needed. The way ahead rides the water's face, goes to gravel, goes to the quarry, goes into a new day of strikes that meet their points, edges that meet their margins, and quiets that find the right place. You step. Fire at your back, wind in your face. A body built for distance starts a lesson it already knows, and the day rises. Night drops like a black hide. From the hearth just kindled, amber pours across the rock face, revealing arms in motion, bodies broken into angles by the crackle of coals, dry smoke braids with a faint grease of marrow still clinging to fingertips. On ground already swept free of reed shards, a ring of people draws inward, bodies edging close enough to share heat, far enough that no one brushes the sharp edges laid at their hips. Fire is the centre of this night, not a lone spark, a quiet axis that pulls every rhythm into its orbit. Light pushes back the yellow eyes that blink at the edge of the grass. Warmth lifts the creeping film of dew from the water's rim. Smoke laces the air and leaves an unseen fence where the nape hair of night beast tends to pause before stepping nearer. Inside the circle, joints loosen by degrees, knees stop clutching, shoulders sink, breath goes deeper. A group keeps heat better than one, and fire makes a group easy to form. A long bone lies near the coals. The head was opened in the afternoon. The shaft holds hollow. Beside it rests a heavy stone with one face ground flat to play anvil. The heel of your hand meets the warmed surface, and the dry feel replaces the cold damp of a river crossing. Supper will gather around soft scraps of meat. The star remains the marrow, energy dense as sun sealed inside a bone. There is no seasoning. The only perfume is meat meeting heat, turning into bright lines inside the nose. Thin pieces turn on a wooden twig, never to black, just to the moment when fibres draw tight and sweet juices bead along the edge. The band's rhythm begins to layer. Half drift closer to the fire so muscle regains lost warmth. Half step to the rim, eyes outward, ears unlatched. No shouted passwords, no hour marks by the shadow of a stick. The blaze itself is the clock. While big limbs last, the coal bed runs long. When coals crumble small, the watch should turn. Ears read insects changing key. Hear water shift tempo. Hear even the space between two sounds to know if calm remains or a thread has just been cut. Sleep arrives in short sets, like shallow waves sliding and withdrawing along a shore. By the flames, a flat slab is propped on a slant to warm the cores dipped wet in the river this afternoon. Small cores line up, not too near the flame, but just far enough that heat will not crack them. Only soak in and ease the strain within. You hover a palm and test the air at the thin skin between thumb and forefinger. That right band of warmth will let stone take force evenly at the blow, send longer fractures, give thinner flakes, leave keener edges, no speech required. The places of each core are like sentences already drafted for morning. A sliver of heartwood is whittled into a small wedge and slid under the main core. The other hand lifts the hammerstone and searches lightly across the face for the vein, a gliding probe. When the right point shows, a decisive tap lands. Not so hard the core is crushed, not so soft it only bruises. The flake releases, a thin plate with a dorsal ridge, its long edge catching a line of shine in the fire. It is not exactly work hour, yet the blaze calls the hands back into habit. Each flake that pops adds one more ring to a memory in stone. The way a tree adds a year, knowledge moves without words. A younger person sits a little behind and off to the side, just inside the light where a wrist can be seen. Fire tracks the flake's lip, shows where the hand is set, where the forefinger pinches so the edge does not chatter. Eyes study, hands remember. Another core goes down. The wedge shifts slightly, tap. A flake sails. The hand behind closes on air at the angle just witnessed. No one speaks, and the lesson repeats itself. Slow, gentle, even. Like the sound of fire licking a hollow log. Eating begins when bellies stop clamouring. The moment bodies can receive energy without grabbing. A piece cooked to the point is laid in the palm, not rushed to the teeth. The tip of the tongue touches first to avoid the burn. A small breath. Then the bite. Jaws close and open in a rhythm learned long ago. Swallow, and the belly warms as if a hot stone were set at the navel. A little marrow fat runs with the lean and makes it smooth. Easy to go down. No stringy resistance, no need to drag with the teeth, no grinding until spent. Energy enters faster. The gut spends less to win it. That is a gift of fire that daytime cannot give. At the edge of the glow, a watcher changes stance. From standing straight to a crouch with one knee bedded, the centre lowered for a quick spring. Hands hold nothing, yet the reach to the probing staff is measured in the mind. Ears sought the weave of night. An owl mutters in a hollow trunk. Jackals move crosswind. Hyenas are still far, their hoarse voices like stones grating. Night smells slide through the nose, layered like fine powder falling from a core. No strange scent. Fire behind the back is like a second back and the real back eases. Once the stomach is warm, the blaze becomes a place to rebuild what was learned in days. A teardrop hand axe rests on the slab and amber runs along its even margin like a fresh-drawn thread. With a small flake you scrape light, trimming away feathery burrs while keeping bite and guarding against shatter on thick bone. Each pass sings a thin note and melts into the soft ticking of coals. The young head beside you tilts and watches the wrist incline by one sure degree. Notes where the thumb supports the flake's spine. Craft passes through firelight by firelight. The ring tightens when wind veers. Smoke pulls one way and slips through the reed screen. On the rock face, hand shadows lengthen and shrink like black animals in step. No one tells a tale aloud, yet the scene narrates itself. A long day ends as a moving picture with no paint. A hand reaches and halves the marrow piece for the elder. Another lays a sliver of bone at the rim so a small finger can dip. A slow, steady pulse of survival's kindness runs around the circle. You draw a core a little farther from heat, so the fall is gradual and right for tomorrow's break. Stone dislikes shock. Treat it like a body. Warm it slowly. Work it. Cool it slowly. Other cores are turned so old strike marks show, writing that glints on skin. Each bruise is an idea tried. Each flake freed is a correct phrase. Each fracture is a remembered mistake. Memory in stone does not live inside a skull. It lives on the mineral surface, dry and cold and far more stubborn than speech. Across the fire, a watcher pricks an ear. A twig snaps. Short. Thin. Repeats. Not the step of something big. Maybe wind. Maybe a small creature. Nose confirms there is no odd scent. Shoulders sink. Fire takes its place again in the mind and steadies it. Supper goes on. Slower. More careful. No large cuts remain. Only tiny meat tucked to bone, and a thin flake must slip in to tease it free. Cleaning a bone is not greed. It honours the work already spent. A clean bone can be cracked for leftover marrow, made into a tool, simmered for strength. A hollow bone tube is set by the coals. Not to roast, to dry. Warmth cures the inner face against mould overnight. By morning it becomes a vessel for kept embers. A hearth you can carry. A hollow of old wood does the same work. A large shell wrapped around flame. Each bit of material in camp finds a role when it meets fire. Flame teaches dull matter its uses and teaches toolmakers to see materials as allies. Words thin. The ring sits almost silent. Heads angle, backs bow a little. Hands open to the heat as if catching an ancient signal. Above, a nameless sky dusts itself with points. The heavens need no constellations to be useful. Remember a few low stars along the horizon, and the path will be set at first light. Now and then a pale line grazes the dark like a flake shedding from a core in the vault. The body stills, the gaze stills, only breath remains. When coals have pulled into a deep red bowl, as when wind runs true, when bellies are warm and backs are loose, the first watchers trade. The last eater stands, wipes hands, steps to the rim. The one just off the edge settles. Lids droop with a single motion. Sleep arrives along with the thin smoke. Slides through hair, across eyelids, through the mouth, into the chest. No dreams. Or if they come, they're only fire pulsing, flakes leaping, stars close enough to touch. Here by the flames the unspeaking memory thickens. A knot of bark is tied to make a hanging loop near the roof. A hammerstone is set where no one will stub a foot. The core is rolled so its good face shows, reminding a morning hand where to bite. None of this needs thinking. Fire has turned these acts into a collective habit. Tomorrow, when sun pours over gravel, sharp edges will continue tonight's story with stone's own light. The coal bed settles into a shallow basin, heart red within and grey sift like sand at the rim. A stick stirs the embers so flame does not climb too high. That measured glow soothes the surface of everything it touches. On the flat stone, several cores have warmed by slow degrees. The back of your hand can come near without scorch. The thin skin feels even heat. Warmth creeps into the micrograin. Makes stone less brittle. Lets tomorrow's fractures run farther and flakes fall thinner. This is not the noon gamble. It is an intentional craft, ruled by sense built across many seasons and many nights. At the fire's lip, a teardrop hand axe lies so the amber can flow along its edge. The belly is smoothed, round and full. The working margin is the length of your palm. The thick spine remains so a grip will not cut skin. Rolled over and back. The axe shifts colour under heat, from wet grey to dry brown to a sheen like a ripened nut. Tool is knife, spade, wedge. The fragment just freed has become a small blade for scraping sinew and grease from bone. In one ring of flame, a single night holds enough functions for an entire day. Not far away, open bone tubes stand tilted. Inside, marrow loosens into a slow syrup. Warm fat slides into the stomach like a tame fire and returns strength lost to cold water and wind. A thin flake slips into the joint line where meat clings and flicks out a piece. Little force is needed, only the right angle. As the flake crosses fibre, it makes a whisper like a coal sighing when turned. Supper continues unhurried. Cooking lets teeth rest, lets the gut stop wrestling, frees muscle for the work of keeping warm. Someone rises and walks the circle to test the windbreak. Branches are driven in on a slant and crossed, tied with bark cord, their feet braced by chocked stones. Backs lean into a larger slab. The opening was set at dusk to match the wind, so smoke thins and runs. Soil underfoot was levelled with a broad scapula used like a shallow shovel. These small things make a nook warm and dry, safe enough that half the band can drowse for a while without jerking awake at a cold gust slipping through wet hide. When watches trade, every motion flows like water shifting its channel. The eater moves back to the rim, tastes the wind, sorts the layers of sound. Night forest is many-layered. Far off is the insect cloth laid even. Nearer is dry grass brushing a leg. Closest is human breath and your own heart once you stand still long enough. The watcher's ear learns to ignore the constant and find the stray. Any offbeat can be a signal. A thick twig breaking is not the same as a leaf falling. The smell that rides with a sound tells the rest. If someone must call, no one lifts a voice. Small stone flick to tap a heel is enough. The probing staff leans at a tilt where the hand will find it in a single beat. The heavy hammerstone lies beyond small feet. Edges rest, turned to the ground. Safety is not shouted, it is arranged by placement and spacing. A night with fire lets that order sink in, so tomorrow night is only a reminder. In the warm ring another lesson continues. An older hand cups a younger wrist. No pull, only a set on the stone in the right spot. An old joint bone stands as a rest, so the core keeps height. The core's nose points outward, so flakes fly away from the circle. The elder's forefinger lays lightly across a knuckle, and reminds the direction to clear the hand at the pop of a flake. The rest is seeing. The light writes the rhythm of wrist, breath, and dropping hammer. Those rhythms become the rhythm of craft, slow and sure, even and efficient. Food thins, work around the fire does not. A few root tubers dug at dusk sit near the coals, not roasted directly, warmed so the starches bloom. A nutty smell spreads, different from fat and meat, balancing the evening's taste. On the ground, a pinch of small seeds dried in the afternoon spills into a palm and is scattered onto a warm smear of marrow so the grains cling. Such small things let the stomach feel complete. With fat and starch and water in place, sleep comes light. Fire's work with stone is not finished. With good cause, heat can be nudged past a threshold and the structure shifts, making tomorrow's fracture sweet. Risk runs high if you push too far. The person doing this does not wander all night. Eyes read coal's depth of red, hands read warmth. The nose reads the smell of damp stone drying. When moisture has lifted, the core is slid away to cool slow. Do not quench. Do not set on wet ground. Morning blows will make flakes as thin and long as onion skin. Cores and flakes both are useful. One quiet night can yield edges enough for half a day. Firelight reflects in a child's eyes. The world arrives not as words, as moving brightness. A forearm lifts a twig, and a bright line runs the wrist like a glowing insect. The child reaches, retreats at heat, smiles without sound. An older hand steadies the small wrist and marks a safe distance. Each evening, no spectacle, no games, only repeated gestures, building a sense for flame in a new generation. A firelit night is also where the day's path is decoded again. On a shoulder blade, a napper scratches a few marks with a small flake. Not a picture, only a count of flakes from a core and cores discarded for bad fracture. Each shallow line in dry bone is a crumb of record. Morning. A glance will tell the band. No long talk needed, only evidence. Others will see those marks and choose tighter, tougher cores and carry less waste. At the light's rim, a pocket of coals is wrapped in dry bark. A small vent is left. This ember bundle will ride at the bottom of the sling and hold a faint heat. The route tomorrow crosses marsh and wet grass. Yet fire will follow like a tame animal. There are nights when wind shoves smoke and the ember goes out. Yet a thin coal stored in a dry bone will keep its glow. Learning to keep flame is not just for supper. It guarantees a place to gather tomorrow, a social centre for the day's orbits. Those finished eating scrub their hands with fine sand mixed with ash, rubbing until grease is gone. Grit drinks oil and leaves the skin dry and grippy. Water would chill the hands, and cold slows the fingers. Sand keeps warmth. Clean palms will not slip on stone. These small choices are the thin line between a needless cut and a smooth round of napping. Wind veers without warning. Fire leans another way. The reed roof trembles and sings faint. A figure rises and chocks another stone at the post foot. Peace shows itself when the world answers a small correction. Set the stone right and the tremor fades. Nothing dramatic. Only a system tuned a touch to run smoothly for one more night. When guts are full, bodies look for soft ground. Hides spread on the dry upper soil. The thickest goes under elder shoulders. The thin lies by the flames for the small so they will not sweat. Lie on the side, back to the thick hides, face to the fire. From that angle, eyes can keep the light without glare. Warmth draws tightness out of muscle. Lids lower, ears stay open. Night after night, sleep this way, wake this way. Above, a few lights slide very slowly along a low line. No one needs to name them with long stories. Remember that when that light reaches the far slab's edge, a watch ends. Time is measured by moving light, by how wood burns, by how legs tire. No numbers, no calendar, and yet the beat is sure. Inside the warm ring, a slim share of time is set aside for refinement. No new tools are added, only existing edges dressed to near perfect. A hand axe's margin circles over a fine streamstone. Round strokes, even strokes, the tiny serrations dim. Fine stone does best when faintly wet. A drop left from a day's rain slips off the roof and lands at the right moment. Wet enough. Cool enough. When the edge is smooth, the hand axe looks like a leaf turned to stone. Someone lays a thin plate closer to the coals to test a different rock's heat tolerance. Not every core is alike. Quartz takes heat poorly compared with flint. Basalt is heavy and tends to break in thick waves. Quartzite depends on the quarry. Night is the time to weigh the day's knowledge another way, by heat and not by force. Morning grips will shift by instinct because of this night. At the edge of the glow, a small shape sits with knees up and draws circles with a finger, then short little strokes that look like the rings of ash around a hearth. The children memorize the order of night through a game of bare hands. A big ring is fire. A small ring is the core place. Thin marks are the path to the watch point. Dense marks are where elders sleep. The game becomes a map of the group in a young mind. One day, grown, that hand will lay a core in the right spot because it played ash rings when it was still too short to reach an adult's shoulder. A watcher pulls a hide over the back and steps a few body lengths farther. From there, eyes can sweep the fire's rim and start to feel darkness as a substance. Smoke smell thins and makes way for wet grass. A thin cry threads the air and quits. Behind, the coals tick. The watcher lets the gaze soften, then returns. With fire at the back, heart slows. The mouth eases. Shoulders drop. Stand there long enough and the body learns to separate calm from oddness by very fine signs. Within the warm, a tempered core is nicked with a tiny scratch so morning will know it has seen heat and not mix it back with raw stone. Sorting materials needs no cloth bags or trays. It needs a reserved strip of ground and a few marks. Young feet tiptoe the outer arc so they do not kick good shards. On the dirt, small plates glint like fish scales when fire hits the angle. They look like pieces of fallen light gathered around the hearth like a brood. Everything slows more as night deepens. Silence is not emptiness. In the hush, the mind filters the day, sifts what helps from what does not. A path through a slick flat must be dropped. A shallow crossing in brackish water is good. One quarry gives easy flakes, another hard ones. These notes are stacked and pressed and set, the way mud layers turn to rock through years. The fire draws people closer again. A knee touches hide. A hand finds the smooth spine of an axe and rests on the thick ridge that will not cut. That sure feel runs up the forearm to the shoulder. Sleep lays down like an invisible blanket. Not thick, not thin. Lids close and amber still pulses behind them. In a few breaths, the fire goes into the dream and becomes the ground for pictures that will fade at morning to make room for work. By then the ash ring will be darker and a few more bright shards will lie quiet like stars dropped from the roof of the sky. A warmed rock backs your spine and your heart slows to the click of fire. Thin heat spreads like a blanket across bent shoulders after a long day's walk. The ring closes without names, each body finding the curve that fits. Knees clear of coal. Elder backs flat to a slab. Small heels inside the light. Amber washes the wall and makes little scales that ripple like fish underwater. Then dissolves, and leaves the stone the colour of night skin. At the glow's lip, a hand axe rests crosswise like a fish beached. Edge turned down. A palm lays upon its back and reads the day's labour in the swell of stone. Each thicker place shows where force once fell. Each smooth place is a dressing scar. Each small bump is a layer of thought pressed in. Under the skin of the back of the hand is a memory that does not talk, recorded by the precise repetition of motion. When lids sink, an invisible map of fracture lines floats up, bright like fine silver veins set on red. Your watch comes and feet carry you to the rim of light. From there the dark divides into 3 fields. Near the fire, ash rises and falls like powdered chalk, each mote a scrap of twig that has just been changed. Farther out lies the middle ground where shadows of people and sticks and branches cross into dotted lines. Beyond that is the true black where sound arrives before form, where anonymous steps move across the earth like a whisper brushing the ear and slipping away. Ears pull sounds apart as hands split flakes, catching the difference between a windshift on reeds and an animal holding its breath. A bark-wrapped ember bundle is tested with the soul. Heat holds. In that small starter, tomorrow is already present. Fire is no longer just warmth and light. It is the centre of the ring, the point to which all gazes return, the live pulse that can be carried. By weight in the hand, anyone here can tell whether the coal still breathes or is gone. That skill is unwritten. It lives in the way you twist bark to hold a spark without smothering it, in the way you slide a dry stick into the heart of ash and wait for the exact instant to blow. On hard ground, a thin flake is laid down and tried with one line skimming a strip of dry hide. The sound is small like wind passing a cave mouth. Then stillness. This quiet is not hollow. It is packed with detail. The roll of a grain of sand under a shoulder blade shifting. The tiny contract of cooling fat in a bone tube. The catches of insect wings like hooks in dark. Such silence does not make you uneasy. It slows thought until you can feel heat travelling finger by finger, until you can smell smoke soften from sharp to sweet, until you can sense the breath of the next shoulder lowering a fraction. Across the circle, a bone tube stands to dry. The lip shrivels a little, and the rim freckles with white points where marrow has set. A narrow blade flicks the inner wall and lifts a thin grease layer, salty and rich and slow to melt on the tongue. Energy runs across the chest to the belly like a coal flaring at the same moment the night wind turns. The meal does not need luxury. Cooking softens fibre. Marrow releases quick strength. The belly quiets. The eyes grow heavy in step with a species built to travel far. A core that has seen heat rests in your palm. The material is changed now. Grains cling tighter. The face is smooth like ripe skin. Tomorrow's ring will sound different. A fine notch is cut on the core's margin. Not decoration. A reminder of the working face. Marks like these gather season by season, forming a shared sign system the band reads at a glance. The community's memory lives in stone, not on skins. Nothing to memorize. The sign sits exactly where hands set. Eyes pass. and force will fly. Elders sleep on the inner half of the fire ring with thick hides at the shoulders and palms over bellies to hold warmth. Their breaths are short and even like a bowstring held just right. Small children cluster like a handful of seeds, hair scented with smoke, lashes flicking to the fire's orange. Sleeping places show the order of safety clearly. Fragile bodies inside, watchers at the rim, eyes outward. No one explains it. Bodies have learned this lesson like they learned a slope's angle, a shallow's footing, a firm lip on a muddy bank. The windbreak's roof is checked again. 2 posts hold hard, the chocks have not slipped. A shadow falls long exactly to the stone feet and shows load is even. Taking it down and raising it once more will go fast at dawn because the lines of force already live in the head. The way strike scars already set tomorrow's angle on a core. From roof to floor, every object has a place. The way every shard will find a job. Scraping, cutting, paring, scoring. A pinch of ash at the hearth rim washes hands. Rub until the fat smell leaves and the skin dries. On the palm a labour map appears. A thick callus at the base of the thumb. A fine scar crossing the wrist. A white speck where a shard once lodged. No need to speak. Man says enough about a day. You look up and a slot of stars opens between leaves. Silver falls very slowly, like a feather searching for a perch. When it slides to the edge of the far slab, the watch will change. Before your fingers touch a shoulder to wake the next, your eyes travel the lit ground one more time. From the heart of the coals to the children's lids, from ash rim to shadow rim, everything sits in its right place. The calm here does not come from high walls or locked doors. It rises from the steady coordination of many bodies breathing inside one ring. A small stick feeds the coal's heart. Do not flare it. Keep the pulse. The cooling tail of the old stick is tucked into the ash edge like a thin blanket pulled over a warm seed. The gesture is a promise to dawn. Fire will remain. Work will resume. Memory and stone will earn one more edge. You pull the hide higher at your throat and fold an arm over the hand axe the way you would hold a pouch of seeds. Smoke stops nipping eyes and becomes the smell of hair and hide and skin. Marrow tastes faintly at the tongue's tip. Ears stay open. Yet the fire counts the heart's rhythm for you. Behind your lids float light flecks, the core to be split, the shallow to cross, the circling birds that signal from far. The windbreak strung between 2 low trunks. These pieces braid into one tough rope and tie riverbank at morning to hearth edge at night. The new watcher settles. The probing staff stands by a knee, a hand rests lightly on the shaft. A thumb finds the smooth dent worn by use. A small ember tube hangs on a strap and feels almost as light as a dried fruit. Wind drafts the shelter mouth evenly. Cold now stands behind the fire and is shy of stepping past. In the deep dark, a pair of hunter's eyes gleams and dies, deciding against crossing the light. Across the way, a hot stone is nudged to an elder's foot as a small reminder that night is not endless. Heat from stone is not sharp like flame. It is steady like warm water running underground. This warmth softened tight dry muscle after miles. It is the same warmth that passed through cores this afternoon. Rearrange grain so that tomorrow, under the hammer, a flake will spring thin and long like a leaf. A young person rolls a hand axe in the palm and traces the just-dressed edge. Sharpness is not measured by blood, but by the chill that rises on the skin when stone slips through air. The margin runs the length of the palm without a break, enough to open hide, to split cartilage, to tease white sinew from a long bone. That pear, that teardrop, is not a sign. It is a way for the wrist's force to enter cleanly into what must part, a way to keep wind from jerking the grip mid-task. A dry twig falls from the roof and clicks like a small sneeze. No one in the ring moves. Only the watcher's eyes shift a hair. Shadow now knows shadow. Fire knows wind. Midnight is past. Far out in the outer dark comes a small sound of narrow hooves on ground. The watcher dips lower, gathers a pebble, and throws toward the source. The stone does not have to strike an animal. It only has to convert the sound into another channel, so the creature learns it cannot walk straight into safety. You hear the pebble land, the dry leaves rasp, the dark slide, then quiet. Without a word, a hand rests on the nearest elder's shoulder and says, "We're still here." Meat on the twigs is finished, yet fat smell lingers in the soil grooves. A pinch of ash covers it, and it is gone. Ash is the night's water for washing. Ash is also tomorrow's map. The fine grey ring will tell a late passer where warmth once lived, where bodies once sat, where hammers once struck flakes that flew like stone snow. Someone's archaeology will begin here, scattered and quiet, in ash arcs, in polished platforms, in lines of thin shards lying the same way. A sling lies by a head and holds half-prepared cores. Carrying cores instead of finished flakes eases the shoulder, and at the new place flakes will fly to match the material underfoot. This logistics has no inked map on hide. It sits in habit. Left arm cradles as right hand grips. The yoke fits the notch in a calloused shoulder. Distance is long, and the means to go long is not only legs. It is how objects are set to the rhythm of breath. You turn and hear the fire make a dry crack. At the light's edge, the probing staff's shadow runs long and points its tip into a dark slot like a compass needle. Compass here is not iron, it is wind scent and watercourse in the line of game. Where land is poor, you choose the shallow crossing. Test bottoms with a pole, lift tools clear of water so hands do not numb and embers do not wet. These motions rehearse themselves even while lying down, in the thin band between waking and sleep. Sleep comes the way it does for a kind that learn to watch in turns. Short, deep, easy trades. No one counts stars. No one tells stories. Yet each small pop of fire is a period placed just right, closing one thought and making space for another not to crowd in. Night's gentleness is not because night is gentle. It is because a ring of people has learned to live with it. Toward dawn, a thin cold moves across shoulders like silk thread. The first breath of wind carries the damp of far water, the smell of earth under ash, the dry leaf mixed with smoke. Night's scent is changing. In the darkest moment before day, there is a very fine instant when the fire inside the coal and the sky along the horizon breathe stronger together. Skin nerves know it before eyes. The body wakes before the thought. The last watch touches a nearby upper arm. Another arm answers with a very small motion that means I hear. No loud voices. None needed. Thin shoulders rise straight. Wide backs stretch long. Wrists find their tools and do not mix them. The circle opens without rupture. Fire is pulled together. Ash is combed into a small grey mound. One ember bundle is tied and set in a bark pouch. Shards are gathered and packed. Thin ones for cutting. Thicker ones for prying. Blunt-nosed ones for scraping. You stand and calves feel light as if washed by light itself. On the ground the prints of the night are shallow hollows, set in a half-ring out of the wind. In the centre is a soft circle of ash. Around it are small quiet points of stone where the wind has bared edges. They look like stars fallen from the roof and laid in a thin belt around an old fire's heart. There is no need to bend and sigh. It is enough to know the place has finished its task. Water shivers in a rock hollow set by the fire's edge, and steam beads on chins. One small sip warms the throat for the road. Then the first foot leaves the ash ring. Then the second, the third, a steady spread. The blaze is not left as a corpse. It is covered, banked, carried. The ring leaves a map on the ground that is enough for a reader and leaves nothing for a hunter. When the sun lifts off the soil's lip, the night's heart still smoulders in the bark pouch. A new day waits just ahead, with a farther river, a fresh gravel bar, new cores to strike, bird signs circling as signals. Warm marrow that will buy one more mile, all will repeat, and each repeat will polish memory one grade finer. Memory in stone does not grow in one night. It grows in countless nights like this, with flame in the middle, people around, and edges lengthening slowly like light along the breadth of a hand. Ash settles to a fine grey ring. In the centre a faint breath moves like a tame creature. Out beyond, insects swap shifts and the small feet recede. On the ground, the flakes lie quiet and bright, ready for another day to walk across and read like a page of a journal without words. And you, as you turn away, carry a small ember, a pouch of tools, and a piece of the night still warm inside your chest. Night has ripened. On the ground, ash settles into a fine grey ring, its outer rim strewn with tiny bright stones like fallen stars still clinging to the grass. Your hand axe rests beside it, the cutting edge turned inward like a promise of safety. The warmth lingering around the hearth slips into tired feet and slowly loosens joints that have carried distance all day. The fire sinks and folds in on itself, not out, only hooded beneath a thin veil of ash so morning can wake it quickly. At the edge of darkness, insects murmur, and farther off, water travels in a hush. Everything returns to a slower breath, the watch passes from hand to hand. Ears stay open, and worry withdraws behind the windbreak. the fresh-cut lines you learn, the rules for reading stone. The crossings through shallow water will still be there when the sky goes grey. Tomorrow resembles today, and that is the quiet beauty of survival motions repeat until they become the memory of your hand. The habit of a small band that keeps one another near the fire. Let your eyelids grow heavy, like ash just smoothed. Let the clack of stone in the mind drift off and leave a warm pocket of hush. Sleeping, you remain inside this circle of light. Dreaming, time draws into the length of a breath, and a million years becomes the steady breath of the fire watchers.